Let's do the damn thing.
Oh, you know what time it is. It's
Time to take it to the Birdland. It's about to go down. Hope you all ready. Yeah, let's go. Come and roll with me to the Birdland. Friends got to giving you the word, man. Any other BS is absurd, man. Sports talking, they give it to you firsthand. They can talk Terps, they can talk O's. Yeah, they both lit. That's how it goes. Baltimore squad, Ravens and Bo. Better tune in. Here gonna show. Birdland, Birdland, Birdland. BS. Birdland, Birdland, Birdland. BS.
What's up, BSers?
It's all about that BS, baby.
That's right. Fred, Scott, James, Drew in the virtual studio tonight as we had a little bit of a bout of COVID, or at least I did anyway, for about a week or two there.
It's all Fred's fault.
It was. So we apologize for not being here last week. That shit is rough. You know me, I'm not one to push one way or the other, but get the vaccine. Just do yourself a favor. Just get the vaccine if you haven't already. We got an action-packed show tonight, man. We got a lot to catch up on. It's been over a week, right? The Ravens end the season on a sour note, or 6.
Depending on how you look at it.
Right, depending on how you look at it. We got special guest Bobby Trosset from 98 Rock and WBAL joining us to break down what was a crazy, crazy 2021 season.
Yeah, and the Orioles are rebuilding their season in multiple ways this week, and it's stirred up a lot of interesting takes within the fan base and on social media, both in the organization and at good old Opacey, some changes that may have some people on edge. We're going to get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, calm down. We'll talk about it. This week's rundown, we're talking COVID protocol changes in the NHL, the shit show that is the Raiders organization, and NFL players that just can't stay out of trouble, man. It's one thing after the other. So we got a lot to cover on this week's show. Before we do, though, got to remind you, that team over at MD Crash that we've been telling you about for the last 2 years, well, they've expanded. More lawyers handling a much broader spectrum of cases now, still handling all your auto accidents and injuries at work, of course. But now the team at Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon can help you with family law issues from divorce to custody to child support and on, to even criminal cases from traffic tickets to homicide. Call now or text 663-220-6500 anytime for any of your needs. Update that number that you've had on your phone for the last 2 years, 667-220-6500. Call or text anytime to get the team at Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon on the case for you.
All right, man. It is time for some Flock Talk. It's been a little bit now that we've all digested that Steelers loss in overtime. That was the heartbreaker. You didn't want Big Ben to walk out the way that he did, guns a-blazing, and on the
keep his hair.
Exactly. So we figured, you know what? Now everybody's digested it. Let's kind of break down. But we wanted to bring somebody in that has been working with the Ravens, been doing a lot of post game with the Ravens, and that's the one and only Mr. Bobby Trosset, who is now joining us. I think we're bringing him out of the backstage area. Bobby, thanks for joining us live on the air, and kind of wanted to just get your take on things. But before we do, obviously, rough season, a lot of things going on, both for the Ravens, the Orioles, big news with the Orioles and 98 Rock this past week and a half. But let fans know, what have you been working on? Obviously, we know what you've been working on with the Ravens and the stuff that you've been putting out on social media, but what all you been doing, man?
First of all, appreciate you guys having me on. That intro has me super fired up. I mean, you guys got some charisma and swagger on this show. So
appreciate it, man.
I get it. I know why the liquor store is sponsoring this place. I tell you that. But no, I do appreciate you guys having me. And yeah, like you mentioned, Scott, it has been an exciting couple weeks, obviously, with the sort of reclaiming, if you will, the Orioles broadcast rights. And for those of you who've been around for a long time, that, during the heyday, and I can't speak to this because I wasn't around. I just have the mentors like Keith Mills, Pete Gilbert, and Jerry Sandusky to tell me what it was like when the O's were on WBAL and there was only an AM signal,
Right.
So
Yep.
lots changed since then, obviously. And when we know they're in the heart of it, what you hope is in the heart of a rebuild with some promising things to come in the near future. So I'm excited to sink my teeth into that. Of course, I've been chatting with a number of, O's extraordinaires, if you will, O's experts. I chatted with Rock today for about 40 minutes. Peter Schmuck and I went for about an hour and a half last week. I'm just going up and down and working my way through the organization to try and get myself acclimated with them. Obviously, I've been following them and covering them from afar since taking over for Keith, 2.5 years ago. But it's another thing to, hopefully we're going to be involved in daily stuff come the season, assuming that it starts on time. So Jeff Arnold and I spoke at length yesterday. So it's been a lot of fun. And obviously we're all still waiting to kind of put a bow on this Ravens season for the John Harbaugh end of season press conference. You'd expect that Eric DeCosta will also meet with the media virtually. So I've been preparing a lot for that, just because there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. There's a lot of answers that are still out there outstanding. And I'm sure you guys would all agree with that. So I'm sure we'll get into that and much more, but thanks again for having me.
Yeah, man. No. Appreciate you being on for sure. Let's dive right into some Ravens talk, man. As like I said, it was a disappointing season, really right from the get. Obviously all the injuries and everything that's been talked about, it ends. But to finish the year 8-9 after starting 8-3 and feeling good about things, it was at a point where Lamar, in a lot of ways, was single-handedly carrying us even through all of these, just the obstacles that have been laid out in front of this team. But then to lose 6 in a row and finish 8-9 and not make the playoffs, a heartbreaking loss in overtime to the Steelers. Just what's a quick synopsis overall for you of this season and just the craziness that it was?
An uphill battle that wasn't sustainable. It got too steep.
Right.
I don't know how else to say it. I'm not surprised by it. I think a lot of the fan base is like distraught. I'm like, why?
Right.
They weren't supposed to be in the position they were in week 18, potentially qualifying. We know it was like 3.3% for the postseason with a number of things that needed to happen, including a win, which didn't. I'm still shocked that Jacksonville found a way to, suck the heart right out of whatever was left in Indianapolis. I know a lot of Ravens fans loved that, not only because of the fact that it was Indianapolis, but the fact that Jacksonville at times this year didn't even look like they were capable of fielding a 53-man roster based on at the top with Urban Meyer. But no, it's just they got absolutely decimated. I still think that while that's a valid excuse,
right,
there are still a lot of questions that need to be answered. And to me, depth is part of the reason why I'm wondering why this offensive line was just such an inconsistent part of their offense throughout the entire year. It didn't matter who you had under center there, even though Josh Johnson was more than serviceable on that day in Cincinnati. I think it just speaks to his professionalism. But I know a lot of folks want to start with the pass rush or the lack thereof come April and in free agency. But to me, if you want to get back to what went right in 2019, that is building a line that's not only you're going to start to dominate in the trenches, but you're going to start protecting your quarterback, who was one of the top 3 most hit in the entire league this year, and nothing changed when Tyler Huntley came in. Now we got to give Tyler his flowers right out of the gate. I think he provided a spark that this offense needed, and I think he's got a bright future in this league. But at the end of the day, you saw why he was a backup quarterback and a former undrafted rookie.
Absolutely.
He's not quite ready. That's not a knock against him. Who saw him coming in to start crucial games down the stretch and almost taking one of the best to ever do it right down to the wire, and Aaron Rodgers on that Sunday in Baltimore.
Right.
I really think that he deserves a lot more credit than he's getting. Then again, a lot of folks are ready to ditch Lamar after the Chicago game and name Tyler the new franchise quarterback, which,
never wait my finger point.
Where you point?
The only guy in the room that would be thinking that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I won't point my fingers, but so that's kind of, I know that was a little bit of a long-winded answer there, but hey, it was a challenging season. You could see it in the face of John Harbaugh down the stretch. I think he was just absolutely exhausted. At the same time, he deserves a ton of credit, because how many teams in this league would have folded given the adversity?
100%.
Right. Exactly. So given all of that, right, what would you say if you're going to grade the team as a whole, the offense, the defense, what kind of grades would you give them and with their performance? Obviously, you talked about some of the things that happened, but how would you grade it given all those circumstances?
Just to preface this, man, we always do our preseason predictions, offensive MVP, defensive MVP, and I mean, you could basically shred those papers, because
there was a lot of red on that Excel spreadsheet, because all those players that we originally picked were all hurt or decimated at some point.
Now, whose idea is to do this year in and year out? I scrapped it on our pregame show this year. I said, Millsy, we can't be doing that, man. I'm not doing the predictions.
I got to learn from the best, man. Apparently that's the way to go, because we did not do well with our predictions at all. And I don't think anybody would have. But to Scott's point, man, given all the controversies and all the obstacles and everything this team had to go, if you were going to give this offense, given what they had out there on the field week in and week out, a grade, what would you grade this offense this year?
For their standards, it's probably being like the high C range. I was going to go like B-. I mean, look, I was looking at the numbers the other day. They still were a top 5 rushing team in the league, and they grabbed Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman off the streets, as we all know. So, at the same time, it'd be hard to. I do kind of sit here and I'm like, is it worth a B-? I mean,
right.
At times they were really explosive, right? The Minnesota game comes to mind.
The Chargers game was off the hook. When the Chargers game came around, that's when you were. I think that's when fans were really behind them, like, oh, here we go. This is going to be a different kind of historic offense than from a couple of years ago.
Chargers game looked like 2019. I agree with you, Drew. And obviously getting the kryptonite off of Lamar's back deserves some credit as well for beating Kansas City in Baltimore. And, look, there were a couple other nice moments there too. But again, I think, down the stretch, bottom line is, excluding the Cincinnati game, right, the blowout the day after Christmas, this defense put this team in a position to win more often than not. So, I do actually, I kind of want to revert back to in that high C range for this offense, because of what they've told us, what they expect, right? Why this is revolutionary, why this is different with Lamar, why they've built around Lamar. That said, I go back to play devil's advocate. They when you lose your arguably the best dynamic tandem in your backfield before week 1, you lose your all-pro left tackle who tried to gut it out. You got to give him all kinds of love and admiration for that. You lose Ronnie after the Vegas game for the year, and hopefully he shuts it down to get back right for 2022, because the Ravens would go along. That would obviously be crucial for them. And then losing Orlando Brown Jr., I don't think anybody should discount that either. So, it was to go back to that analogy right off the top. It was a tall task, and we were reminded that when it's a constant revolving door and interchangeable parts, especially up and down that line, it's hard to win and finish football games, and they weren't able to do it specifically in the red zone.
Yeah, and that's, I think, their biggest struggle this year. And that was a big difference from where they were in 2019 to this year, was the inefficiency in the red zone. But when I'm looking at this offense as a whole, again, taking all those things into consideration, the injuries, not having your left tackle out there, the change at right tackle, and that was just a revolving door, not having your dynamic backfield, you're not having your number 1 wide receiver that you drafted this year in Rashad Bateman until a few weeks into the year. You take all that into consideration and you listen to these numbers. They were 6th in total yards at 378 yards a game. They were 13th in total passing yards at 233, 3rd in total rushing yards at 145, and 17th, this is where they struggled, 17th in total points at 22.8. And I think those total points come down to the efficiency in the red zone and some of the struggles that they had on 3rd down. So for me, if I'm giving this a grade, I'm right there with you. I'm in that like B, maybe even B plus, given the circumstances of who they had out there.
James is chomping at the
Go
bit
ahead.
over there. He's going at you on that.
We'd all
Go ahead,
want you
James.
as a teacher, Fred.
I'm just saying.
No, I'm just tired of the Greg Roman. I'm tired of the same old offense. If you look at when he was in Buffalo, San Francisco, and now with the Ravens, it's the same offense he's running. Everybody knows what's coming. You just hope that one of these plays work out. But, he says he has all these things in the vault. Where's the vault? Because the last 3 years, I can pull up the same offense in all three teams that he has coached. So I think they got to make a change. And then another thing that bothers me is why hasn't John Harbaugh done his year-end press conference?
So, Bobby, that's actually a good transition, and that's a good topic because that's a hot-button topic with fans is obviously the Greg Roman and just the coaching situation overall with the Ravens right now. I just read off a bunch of stats to you. When you look at the stats, again, 6th in total yards, 13th in passing, which they were bottom of the barrel. I think they were like 25th or 26th in the league just a year ago or 2 years ago. And then 3rd in total rushing with a hodgepodge of players that they threw together in training camp. I'm on the opposite end of this. I don't think Greg Roman is as big a problem as some of the fan base out there. I understand that I think some people just want to see change. They want to see this offense be that elite level number 1 rated offense, but there's only one team that can be that number 1 overall offense. What's your take on the coaching situation and Greg Roman as a whole?
So I'll just kind of start this off with reminding everybody that I'm not a Ravens apologist. Yes, there are they are our direct partner, right? And there are certain things that we have to follow, especially on the post-game show when a lot of these wackos call in, right? And they're leaving the stadium and they're all liquored up and they're heading to Fed Hill and this, that, the other, right?
Like the one I messaged you on when I was listening the other week.
Exactly. To me, I hate when – I don't hate, but I find it bothersome when fans are quick to come at the heads of coordinators because although Greg, absolutely, to your point, James, he often boasts about said vault. And I'm not sure we've seen the vault. I'm not sure if the vault exists.
Tumbleweeds.
But if that's a personnel thing, I get it. Whatever. Maybe you don't want to dive into the vault as much when you're not fully equipped from a personnel standpoint. But bottom line is, I'm with you there, James. I don't think he has lived up to the hype that by the way, he's the one that's brought this up, right? He's the one that's coined it, the vault.
Right.
So I get it. At the same time, down the stretch, I don't, to me, going after Greg Roman is short-sighted because it comes down to execution. Yep. And the execution is, as you guys all know, that can only be done by the players. The pre-snap penalties, the illegal formations, those to me are sure you may want to blame that on coaching or whatever. To me, that's just an execution thing. That's a lack of discipline. That is a different personnel, interchangeable parts coming in and out, right? Tyler Huntley said down the stretch at one point that he thought that the clock was not mistimed or whatever. I'm not sure what the validity to that is. But I'm not so quick to get on the coordinators and the whole delay here in the end of season press conference is very curious to me because if you look around the league with the teams that have been bounced, right? Steelers, Mike Tomlin, a couple days after hit his press conference today, I believe. Bill Belichick was hours afterwards. I'm wondering if there is a change coming because it's now been today's Tuesday. It's been close to 10 days, right? So we're coming up on 10 days since the Week 18 season finale. I haven't heard of any rumblings of changes coming. I've been texting with a lot of the beat reporters throughout this week. They're wondering the same thing about this delay. Oh boy, the plot thickens if that's the case.
Which I think that
could be good.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most
Depending
interesting
on how
thing.
you look at it.
I think when you're talking about Giro and the issues, I think that people kind of get frustrated with. Obviously, some people will point to scheming, but one of the things that regularly happened, no matter who the quarterback was this season, was the delay of game penalties or getting to the line with less than 10 seconds left on the clock, where there's not much of a chance, for Lamar to actually maybe read the defense. I think that's one of the things that people pointed out. They want to see growth from Lamar's standpoint. They want to be able to see him read the defense, make adjustments at the line. But if he doesn't have the time to be able to do that, it's not happening. Are you hearing anything of is that just the play calling not being ready for the next play and getting it down there in time? Is it a Lamar maybe having a hard time hearing it? Have you heard anything, or do you see anything with that you're looking at it and kind of saying that's really odd situation for a guy to be this regularly getting to the line this late?
Maybe I'm wrong, but I saw a stark difference between Lamar and Tyler Huntley in that regard. So I think personally, it was more of a Lamar thing than it was a play calling thing or a Roman thing. Am I wrong?
I think Lamar needs to improve in the hurry up offense.
Yeah.
We all have seen that throughout this year. I agree with you, Fred. I think, like I said, I referenced it earlier on the show, Tyler brought a spark. And I think part of it was just the uptick in pace, the uptick in just how quickly this team wanted to work offensively. And it, at the same time with Tyler, they bled a lot of clock, right? They dominated some time of possession games. The Rams one comes to mind.
Yep.
They had no business losing that game, And so, I think Lamar has to improve from that standpoint. He was indecisive this year. I really do believe that. He was indecisive in the pocket. He played hero ball at times. And obviously that you can look at that and say, well, that's admirable because of what wasn't around him. And you can understand why he felt that need. But we should also squash this right in the bug, too, the whole narrative that he was hurt while running. That's just absolutely mind-boggling that was floating around the internet. He was flushed out of the pocket by Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who's going to be a handful for a long time out there in Cleveland. And it was such a routine play. Yeah, he had to tackle him in the ankles. There was nothing dirty about it. That's half the time. That's the only way you can get Lamar down. Now, the other debate is, did it happen the week prior, or I think it was either within the weeks prior in Pittsburgh on the down marker?
Yep.
I don't know. But I do know that Lamar was very indecisive this year. And to me, that's more on Lamar himself than Greg Roman. Maybe they're going to make a change here in the next week or so, and I'll be wrong. To me, Greg deserves another chance to execute come 2022.
With the bone bruise, did we ever hear where exactly on the foot that bone bruise was? I know that people were speculating the way that he was walking, that it was bottom of the foot. I've heard higher ankle, because we all thought it was potential high ankle sprain. But we never, from what I was reading, from what I was hearing, I never heard anything that said where exactly it was that would lead you one way or the other, whether it was that down marker or the play.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything along those lines?
I was out there before we were all reverted back to remote stuff over the last month of the season. I was out there the week after Pittsburgh, and he just had your generic tape that looked like it was like the original designation, right? The low ankle sprain, which by all accounts was supposed to be a 1 to 3 week timeline. What changed? That's going to be my question when we get together with these guys, is what changed from the original designation to the Green Bay broadcast with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, who said, no, it's actually a bone bruise.
Yeah, they broke the news right on air.
we're all like, well, wait a second here. And then it wasn't until we had a chat with Lamar, I think it was a week ago from yesterday, that he doubled down and confirmed that it indeed was a bone bruise that's now been a month plus running. So there's a ton of confusion there. I'd love to know how the severity kind of was downgraded, if you will. And that was definitely some miscommunication. I'm not sure if that was strategic, but definitely something that is worth looking into.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look ahead with, like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of big decisions that this front office has to make moving forward. Some of those decisions are along the offensive line. One of my favorites, Bradley Bozeman, obviously he is up for a contract. He is going to hit free agency. This could be potentially our second young up-and-coming center to leave after Ryan Jensen leave and now potentially Bradley Bozeman. What's your take on Bradley Bozeman as a whole? Do you think there's any potential to bring him back, or do you think he's just played his way out of Baltimore based on contract?
As an aside, I just saw the Terps halftime score on the road at Michigan.
I'm sorry. You should have seen it then.
No. I'll spare you guys. You all have phones. You can go look. But
it was like 5-10 seconds. Ryan will probably post it for us now.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Throw that up there in a little bit. We'll all choke on our own vomit there. So, although Danny does deserve credit because it's a super hard task that he's being dealt with right now. So, I think Bradley's gone. Unfortunately, I think he has played his way out of Baltimore. He is the consummate professional. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they find the money for him. But to me, as we all know, especially when you're a lineman, maybe not as much of a shelf life as running backs have, you have to make your money, and you have to make it while you're healthy and you're young. And to me, there's going to be another team out there. There's going to be a massive market for Bradley. Obviously, he showed his versatility, whether it's guard or center. Obviously, coming back to the position that he won a couple titles with at Alabama under Saban this year. They needed him. I think we all remember what happened in Buffalo last season, which resulted in not only the end of the season, but a concussion for Lamar. To me, Bradley tipped his hand, man. You saw his end of season press conference.
Yeah.
You saw the raw emotion. And I think he knows. I think he's already had some conversations with the front office, and there's an understanding that the two sides are going to be far apart here. And it's a bummer. You know, he is. Think about how many. Yeah, he's been a steadying force, right, as the snapper of footballs. But at the same time, think about how many. I'm just thinking about a couple. I'm envisioning a couple key blocks that he had down the stretch as well, just opening up space. We haven't even mentioned what he's done off the field for this city and for this organization. I think he and his wife, Nikki, should absolutely be celebrated for all of their efforts. I believe they're back on the road right now doing good deeds and service. And man, if it is over for Bradley, I think we should all celebrate him because he is just he is the epitome of what it means to be a Raven.
Well, and at first, you talk about, him tipping his hand. At first, when he was, doing that press conference and you saw the emotion, the initial was kind of, okay, he just, he has a love, he has a passion for this city, him and his wife with all that they've done, off the field, him winning the Walter Payton Man of the Year for the Ravens, right? It was an emotional season for him twice, right? So it was a very emotional season for him.
He's a nominee.
Nominee. I'm sorry. Yes. But the Ravens nominee. So, but to have that honor, it was emotional for him, right? So that's what I originally read it as. But then the more I watched it, the more I think you brought up a great point. It was as if you start reading him when he gets to the fans, and he appreciates the fans, and it was that recognition, to your point, and saying, I'm not going to be around them anymore. And it kind of, to your point, tipped the hand of what I think actually is going on here. And I don't want to see him go. I hope same as you. I hope we're wrong, but I just don't know that they're going to come to an agreement that's going to make sense for this team with the cap that we already have and utilized, and not taking up too much, as we know Eric DeCosta doesn't like to do. He likes to have that playroom at the end, middle of the season, start of the season. So
the brutal part of all this is that Patrick Ricard could find himself in the exact same situation.
Yep.
And to me, that's even more.
It's use check 2.0 in that situation. Right, yeah. Look at what Juszczyk started
with
doing
even
really
more
well
versatility.
Right, and then moved over, but he's
and a couple pounds.
Yeah, a few pounds.
I
Another human being.
Yeah.
I read that apparently Patrick McCarr and Bozeman, they're going to try to be like a package deal. Like wherever one goes, that's where the other one wants to go too.
Money's going to talk at the end of the day. They're going to take the biggest contract, I'm sure, from wherever they're going.
Yeah. Well,
love to keep him here, but
obviously, if you're not gonna get a guy and sign a guy like him, you could look at it in free agency. I think a lot of people are pointing at the draft this year, right? The Ravens currently have I believe it's 10 draft picks in the draft this year. The first being at number 14. with the depth that's in this draft outside of the first round, a lot of people are questioning, okay, what do the Ravens do? What do we see them do? Do we see them, is this a best player available type situation where we've seen them do that at times? It's surprised everybody. I don't know if it surprised you, Bobby, but if you go back and you look at our draft show last year, all of us were surprised with the Oweh pick. I think it took all of us off guard. We weren't expecting it. Or do they attack that specific need and go after something? Do they trade back, as we have historically seen them do at times, to just continue to gain more capital in the draft and be able to look and take more swings at players? What do you see the team's needs being, and where do you see them addressing those needs within the draft itself?
Well, by all accounts, they're 100% going to stick with their philosophy right off the top, right? And that's best available rather than need. It's just what they've done time and time again. So, if there's a high impact corner that's sitting out there ready to go at 14, heck, would you put it past this team to shock the world? The last time I really remember being shocked, I wasn't all that shocked with Oweh. Oh, maybe just because all the talk about his lack of sack production at Penn State, maybe that was a little bit surprising that they took that big of a risk. And clearly it's paid off, right? I know it's like maybe a sour taste in some folks' mouth because he wasn't healthy down the stretch there with his foot injury, missed the last 2 games. But clearly, if you were to pick a rookie who's most exciting coming out of this first season, to me, it's got to be him because of his ceiling. I'm not sure where his ceiling is, to be honest with you. So anyway, to me, you go back to 2020, right? And there in the second round in like the mid 50s, I think it was like 55 or 52. And when they went after J.K. Dobbins with Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards still on the roster, everybody was like, what is happening? Well, that clearly worked out to be a major necessity not that long after. So it wouldn't surprise me if they go after, again, somebody, let me say this, a position other than what everybody's talking about, and that's the dynamic pass rusher and depth at tackle. It would not surprise me if because those are the 2 biggest needs. We can probably all agree, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if it's not those 2, I won't be surprised. And if it is, then one of those 2 will end up being the best player available based on their philosophy that they've lived by for 26 years.
Right. Well, you mentioned cornerback, and that's actually kind of where my head was going with this because, well, if you want to keep a guy like a Bradley Bozeman or a Pat Ricard, you're spending about $45 million of your cap space next year on cornerback just from your top 3 corners. Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Tavon Young. That's $45 million of your cap space. There has been some rumors that the Ravens, I don't know if there's any truth to it, but that the Ravens were potentially listening to suitors for a guy like Marcus Peters, which if I'm looking at the number right now, that's a $15.5 million cap hit next year. So if a top tier type of cornerback that can be an impact player is available at pick 14 or where are we at 14 or 15 this year? 14, I believe. I think that makes a lot of sense because then that does give you the flexibility. As much as I love Marcus Peters and we sorely missed him this year. If you are looking to rob Peter to pay Paul type of thing and move the salary cap more from the defensive side to the offensive side, I think that's one way you could go about it.
I personally would be surprised if they move on from Marcus. I think a big decision in that obviously will be the recovery timetable and the recovery process. And I mean, look, I think we all watched that Rams game against his former team. And he looked like he was ready to suit up and go out there. He was practically coaching. Let's not forget too. I think it was a preseason game last year. Wink actually let him call plays in the second half. I think it was in a preseason game or it was one of the games in 2020. I'll never forget that. Like he's clearly going to be a coach or clearly going to be involved in the team after his career is over. But yeah, I would be really surprised. To me, he's like the heart and pulse of this team in a lot of ways, which is funny because he hasn't been a part of it for all that long. I mean, he came in midway through 2019. So he's just too much of a ball hawk, too much of a street fighter, too much of a, like I said, the pulse and the heart of this team to let him go. That's just me though. And I think, the 1-2 punch that is covering both sides of the field that he and Marlon at full capacity, at full strength, even though Marlon did take a step back this year because of how much he had to do. If you ask me, I think it was more about what he was tasked to do with no Marcus. To me, that's worth seeing for years to come.
The only thing I would say to that it would be that the Ravens have done that in the past, where they've had a veteran, right, that's been the guy. And Mark Ingram comes to mind, right? You're talking about being the heart of the team and the biggest cheerleader. Truz was, that was all him. He was the devotion behind it and really getting this team pumped. But they were willing to walk away because it was time. They saw that it was time in the writing on the wall. And I think, to your point, there's a few things that are going to factor into their decision. I think they hopefully will weigh that, but I don't know. Given that historically they are willing to say, "Hey, we're willing to take the guy that was the guy that pumped everybody up, got the locker room, starting all the chants." It's okay to let that guy go if he's not giving you the production that you need on the field. So whether this injury is, hindering him going into the 2022 season is going to play a huge role in whether they're willing to part ways with him, or if you're willing to trade him if you have a suitor.
Well, to the other point of that, and Garnett brings it up in the chat room, I mean, if you're trying to keep everybody happy, there is the option of also extending Peters as well, moving the money around and it not being such a big cap hit. You keep him here, and then that, again, still frees up money. So there is ways to kind of keep him in the fold regardless. Go ahead, James.
New Orleans made a life off of it.
Right.
Bobby, I'm going to just say I'm a big Raven fan. I get a lot of shit on this podcast, but Fred, Ryan, Drew, they get all attached to them like their girlfriends. See, I'm old school. My family's Italian. They grew up having nothing. They have a successful restaurant business. So we see workers come and go.
Which restaurant?
I'm all for, it's called Pizza John's in Essex. They have the best pizza. We've been around for 55 years. If you ever want to come down, I'll give you a tour of the place and treat you to a dinner. But I see good workers that I love. You come down whenever you want, but you don't like their pizza. So anyway, I see people come and go, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to miss them. But I don't get attached like these guys. Like, I'm all for it. Like, you service your purpose. There's always going to be someone that can replace you, that you're always going to say, oh, here's another one that can fill the void. So I'm all about, I don't get attached to these guys. They're serviceable people to do a job. But when they got to get overpaid, and I'm not one to overpay somebody, they can go somewhere else. Thank you for helping.
Fan is short for fanatic, right?
TED Talk, man. Italian TED Talk right there. I love it.
Well, let's jump into the guy that he's alluding to. Many fans are worried at this point. The Lamar deal, the extension hasn't gotten done, right? He's going into the 5th-year option that we picked up, and fans are really concerned. We heard Lamar say this, last week, I should say, in the presser, that he's not worried about getting a deal done. He's worried about getting healthy. That's also, that's talking and just saying, all right, I'm going to say that I'm focusing on football, right? We all know he does want to get a contract done. He wants to be successful at the same time. And he's a workhorse. He's willing to put in the work. We've seen that historically from him. So with that and taking into that all that stuff into account, are you hearing any concerns out of the castle that a deal's not getting done? Are you thinking that his market value has dropped with the injury and illnesses this year and not being able to lead this team the full season, even though he led them 8 of their wins? They were pretty much putting the team on his shoulders. It's on him. Are you hearing anything? What's your take on the fact that the contract's not done yet?
To me, it's still when, not if. I'm just looking up his. I just want to make sure this is right. I think it was 37-12. Let me see. Yeah, 37-12 over the course of his time as a starter. So to me, it's always going to be when, not if. He has won a ton of games. Clearly, there is some differences happening here within the two sides. I'm sure it muddies the water, being that he's really not represented by anybody besides his mother and maybe some folks within the Jackson camp. I think his value has gone down a little bit. I believe it's probably definitely south of Mahomes and probably south of Josh Allen at this point. We'll see what Josh ends up doing this postseason. I think it was one of the best games I've ever seen from him.
Yeah.
That other night in Western New York. But look, I think a lot of folks forget that they did pick up his 5th-year option last year, right? So he'll have that significant salary spike to $23 million and change for this upcoming year. And he could play, hypothetically, again on no deal. And to me, he took a big risk this year, right? I'm sure they were willing to. I'm sure it was going to be in excess of $40 million per season before this year, and he took a risk. So, and I see Garnett chiming in here about how his price went down, and I just the numbers. I'm not sure where else I'd go there. I think his numbers, his production, and I don't want to say he regressed this year. I think that'd be a strong word based on the personnel or lack thereof around him, but I think he showed you that he still has room to grow. And a lot of the things that we've talked about, right? The indecisiveness, continuing to improve on throwing outside the numbers, and letting some of the pieces around him do the work for him, which obviously at the same time, those pieces weren't there this year. So I'm not hearing much about whether or not it's going to get done this offseason. I'd like to think it's going to get done before the start of this year. This is the start of the 2022 season. But, man, this is one of the most bizarre stories in all of sports just because he's not repped by anybody.
Right. Right. And to David's point, he's asking, do you think without an agent, Lamar might be more willing to take less so that the team can do more because he keeps his own money versus having to pay the percentage to his agency? I mean, maybe there's some truth to that, but, it really just depends on Lamar's mindset, right? I mean, we just talked about the stark difference in 2019 to 2021 with Lamar and his comfort. And I think a lot of that comfort came from his offensive line that he had in front of him, right? And if you're talking about losing pieces on that offensive line, that directly affects his play and his production, right? And I feel like maybe there is some validity to that maybe he will take a little less money to maybe bolster that protection in front of him.
Remains to be seen. I'm just seeing one of these questions come in from Mr. Freestyle. Did the Ravens make an offer before the season? I'm not sure we know that if an actual offer has been extended, but to me, there's obviously they've had conversations. They stalled in the middle of the season. You can remember the Adam Schefter report. Was it before it was the day of one of the primetime games, and they had a ton this year. So I don't even remember which one it was. It might've been the Vegas one or maybe even the Colts, but remember that it was talks stall between Lamar and the Ravens because he's immersed. I think that's what the word they used, immersed in the season. And I found that to be super interesting. That was either used as a smokescreen because they are so far apart.
Yeah.
Or that he really wanted to sink his teeth into this. And because he is the one negotiating with his mom, that he couldn't do both at once. And obviously if that's the case, if the latter is the case, that's super admirable. I give him credit for that. But I think, the bottom line is he took a big risk playing this year without a deal, and he may be inclined to do it again. And knowing and judging his style and knowing the way he plays and just the game of football itself, it's a tough pill for me to swallow if I'm a close family member of Lamar, knowing that just the risk that is involved there.
I get it, but we saw it work out for one Joe Flacco in 2012. Yeah, it worked out pretty well for him.
Did he run much?
I'm pretty sure there's video of him standing there. Oh man! All right, well, Bobby, we know that your time is valuable, man. We have greatly appreciated having you on the show. It's been great talking with you. Excited to see the stuff that you're gonna be putting out on social media. I know you've just started up really kind of getting into the YouTube and pushing your YouTube channel. So let's tell everybody what all you've been working on and what they can expect from you here in the next few weeks or even few months.
Yeah, appreciate the plug, guys. Just taking all the content that I produce on my various social channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and making it into content that can live on YouTube. That's really the long story short there. So, for example, tomorrow at 2:15 Eastern, I'll have Jeff Zaribik on from The Athletic, who I believe just won Sports Writer of the Year today in Baltimore. So congratulations to Jeff. He's just so incredibly thorough. He and Jameson set the standard here in Baltimore. But so anyway, he and I are going to go on. We're going to do a Facebook Live that'll also be broadcast live on YouTube. And we're just going to dive into a number of these topics, some of which we've already addressed tonight. But the big one will be what do the Ravens do before the May deadline on Marquise Brown's 5th-year option? And to me, that's one of the biggest stories that's sort of being overlooked right now because of Lamar, because of the delay in this end-of-season press conference, because of the speculation surrounding potential changes coming to the coordinators. So we're going to dive into that at length, and encourage you to if you're really into the cap thing. We've talked a lot about that's not my expertise. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not exactly well versed in cap space, but I did have somebody who is on last week, Brian McFarland of the Russell Street Report, and he was just super thorough. So anyway, all that's up on my page, and this is great, guys. You appreciate you having me on, and it looks like I'll have to make my way out to the county to crush a couple cold ones sometime.
Yeah, man, that'd be a good time, man, for sure.
Once we get back in studio, we get everything up, and hopefully we'll actually be revamping the studio. Maybe we'll have to have you up here sometime and have you live in the studio.
Yeah, get rid of this Brady Bunch format.
Or you come down to shop.
Jones.
Yeah. No, James, you better believe it. I'll be taking you up on that offer. I can't eat pizza, but let's go do it.
We have pizzas, pasta, subs, so everything's homemade.
Awesome,
Appreciate
guys.
you taking the time to join us, man. Make sure you go follow Bobby on all his social media platforms. Look him up on YouTube, Bobby Trosset. Bobby, appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
man. Have a good one.
Man, that was awesome. Appreciate Bobby taking the time to join us for a few minutes there. And all the hot button topics that we've been talking about at ends with the Ravens. Just great insight. Love what Bobby does.
Great guy, and again, all of his content that's out there too. He mentioned Brian McFarland, and I got to actually watch that one live, and that was a great breakdown of what you're kind of seeing. So obviously he's got a lot of content, and kind of close to everybody, which is what makes him great with his content. So glad we could have him on. Fred, you want to wrap up anything with the Ravens talk before we kind of move on?
No, I think he covered everything, and I think we got to all the points that we want to. Listen, this is the kind of slow part of the off season for the Ravens, so we're gonna have a lot more to talk about, a lot more time to talk Ravens. So we'll dive into things week in and week out. What we got to talk about now is we got to talk a little bit about the NFL playoffs, right? Is obviously this weekend was the first round wild card weekend, and it was wild. You had a lot of a lot of big blowouts in this game. A lot of games that I think went as expected, but a lot of really, really high-scoring games. And kudos to Cincinnati and Joe Burrow and the Bengals, man, for winning their first playoff game in a very, very long time, as they end up beating the Raiders and moving on to take on the number 1 overall seed Tennessee in the first round of the divisional playoffs.
Yeah, you're the only 10 I see.
What's that?
You're the only 10 he sees, is what he says. Oh, jeez. All right.
Week, so you're good.
I think when you look at the season and what's kind of happened, obviously normally we do our predictions, by the way, and we all got blown out of the water because James just destroyed us all this year.
You're burying the lead. Yeah, he destroyed us by everybody else tied though.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were all within like a game of each other basically. So.
Yeah, but I think one of the other games that I kind of was looking at and expecting to be a little bit of a fight was the Bills game. Given what the Patriots did when obviously it was raining, so a little bit different conditions, but what they did the last time they saw the Bills, and the Bills just seem in this game, they came out with a vengeance in this game, wanting to prove a point.
Yeah, to Bobby's point, man, that's probably the best all-around game that I saw Josh Allen play. I mean, he did it all. He threw for, 5 touchdowns in that game, I feel like. He had rushed for 64 yards. What's that?
It's like, what day he do in that game?
Exactly. And, I mean, it was freezing cold out there. To just do what he did against one of the most genius defensive minds in Bill Belichick, and kind of embarrassed him, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
I mean, he kind of had his tail between his legs in his post-game press conference. So, very, very big win for the Bills.
Maybe they should have had Mac Jones throw it only 3 times instead of 30 times.
But especially like you said, around week 12, 13, that back half of the year, you were like, holy shit! You were like, oh, here we go again. The Patriots dynasty they're just going to replenish the defense, and the offense is going to do enough and all that. And it was like, you were crowning their defense as like one of these great defenses, and then like just to get to that game and then just completely get crushed, you're like, okay, we were all wrong.
Right. And Dawson Knox, where the fuck did he come from? He had 2 touchdowns in the first like 8 minutes of the game. The dude, I mean, we had this whole fantasy playoff draft, and you have to draft players from all the the playoff teams. Dawson Knox wasn't even my radar. They just don't ever use the tight end, and man, he had a big game in that game.
Huge game. The other game that I think was a surprise to some people. I think when you look at the past, 2.5, 3 months as a whole, you shouldn't be surprised given what's happened. But the Rams' domination of the Cardinals and that game, I think what made that game, entertaining was just that it was a very scrappy game, right? You had the hit and it wasn't necessarily a bad hit. The Cam Akers on Buda Baker hit, that winds up putting Buda Baker down, carting him off the field. Cam actually, people were giving him crap because he like walked over top of him at first. He thought his hands was up, like giving him a high five or trying to let him get him to help up. He didn't realize
that was a nasty hit.
Buda was locked up.
Yeah, like, he stopped right away. Like he got about like 5 yards away, and maybe someone said something. He like quickly turned around, was like, "Oh, okay." And he like kind of like dropped down.
I think he heard somebody behind him going, "Get him over," because they were screaming for him, and I think he realized that. Not sure what the hit playing in the background on my computer. Sorry, I had it pulled up and it was playing in the background.
Was it porn? Was it?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. But no, I think that game, Aaron Donald. Right, getting the potential suspension for his game, for a 1-game suspension, coming his way for throwing a punch.
Yeah, that was a like you said, total domination.
I'm Sam Donald. I'm over Sam Darnold too. I'm kind of over Aaron Donald, to be honest with you. I think it was a lot of a topic I was reading a lot on today. Like, you look back at, like, it's a guy that, like, yeah, he is one of the most ferocious defensive guys in the league, but it's like it borderline on, you're giving him a little bit more credit than like Ndamukong Suh. Like, it's almost exactly like Suh, but like he produces more on the field than Suh like ever really was doing during his antics. But there's a lot of times where like he is literally like pulling on guys' face masks, getting in there and pushing them back and pushing them on the throat, and it's like, you know what I mean? At one point, do you like at least something?
Right. That's true. And then the other thing in this game that you got to look at too is, can we kill all the noise and all the people out there that were talking about how much better Kyler Murray is than Lamar Jackson? Can we go ahead and kill that narrative? I mean, he has not performed well in any big game.
He gets hurt a lot.
Like you said, he can't stay on the field. He gets hurt a lot. And just overall, he did not look good in this game. I mean, it couldn't have gotten any worse than it did in that first quarter for that guy.
No, it was pretty bad. He did not look comfortable. Like, and there's the knock, right? One of the biggest knocks on him is some of the batted balls that he's had throughout this season. Right. And it's a knock on the height again, right? We're back to that square one of the knock on the height. And we're seeing guys just get to the line, get in front of him and just jump and be able to swat these down because he can't see over the line. If you put pressure on him, yes, he can scramble left and right. But if you collapse the pocket on him, he's either got to run forward or he's got to throw it. And usually when he's throwing, the ball's getting batted down pretty quickly. So it's not helping him. All right, so let's kind of shift and take a look at the games that are coming up, right? So we've got through that wild card round. We're now into that divisional round. Let's make some live on-air predictions. So let's start with the Cincinnati going into Tennessee, 4:30 on Saturday, CBS. Going to be an interesting game to see how these two teams go at it. I think I know who's going to win, and for me, I think that the Bengals are just on a roll right now. They're playing good football. They're clicking. The scheming is working out. They're comfortable. Burrow looks at time most of the time. He's looking relaxed in the pocket, finding his receivers. They got over the hump of the first time in the playoffs in how many years, right? He's got more playoffs wins than Andy Dalton does in his whole career. So that's a step up. But I think they're just rolling right now. I would say Cincinnati in this game. I'll go 33-24 Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Cincinnati's firepower right now is elite. I mean, they're playing at that kind of a level right now. Joe Burrow spread the ball all over the field. Jamar Chase looks like a 6-year seasoned vet at this point, a 6-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro. I mean, that's the kind of level that he's playing at. T. Higgins wasn't even a factor in the first game, and you still got him out there as a weapon. They were able to get Tyler Boyd involved. And listen, Tennessee's secondary is not very good. And I feel like the Bengals will be able to do enough. I know Tennessee is getting Derrick Henry back, and obviously that's a big piece for them, but he's coming in. I get it. He might have fresh legs, but he's coming in with no work. He hasn't had any live football in a very long time. Again, I think Cincinnati will do enough to win this game. I've got them winning 38-33. It's going to be a closer game, a high scoring game, but I think that the Cincinnati will be able to do enough.
All right, Drew, who do you got?
I mean, I'm going to go against the team everyone keeps sucking their nuts on. I'm going with Tennessee over Cincinnati. I hear you on Tennessee. I think we still think of you being able to throw on them, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily not true, but I was the main guy all year long saying, pointing out the Ravens' injury, and left and right you would lose 3 or 4 guys a game.
Right.
Tennessee was in that same boat. Somehow, some way, whether that's other teams around them or not, they took the 1 seed.
Yep.
Like that's not unearned. Like they earned that shit. They beat the Bills, they beat the LA, and these. I mean, I know the Bills game I think was at home, but the LA game that was on the road. Like, yeah, the Colts choked it away, but they swept the Colts on the season. So like they've shown up against these upper echelon teams. I still think Cincinnati still has a little ways to go, and I'm not ready to crown them. I'm kind of like Wink. Fuck it, I don't care. Like I think a lot of people are putting the gold jack on this guy. Right? I've seen he's Tom Brady this and Tom Brady that. Stop.
Right.
Because just next year he could tear the other ACL. You know what I mean? Like let's let him get more acclimated to see if this isn't a 1-year thing. Because it that exactly is what happens every year. There's a lot of guys that gets that second, third year their thing. You look, oh, this is so cool, and then once the league figures them out, it's a different story. I think I'm long-winded because I haven't talked a lot.
Very good.
I don't. I'm not ready to pick the rival right now, and I give a lot of credit. I don't like Tennessee either, from back in the day for being a rival for them. I don't like them either. But what they went through, they give benefit of the doubt.
Shout out to Emma and Lily. Hey, Emma and Lily. James, what do you got in this game?
I'm going back with the guys on. I have Cincinnati winning. I think it could be a blowout or it could be a good game. The only thing that can be stopped is Tennessee has a good defensive line. They could stop the run, but Joe Burrow attack could be dangerous. And I was just pulling up the scores of the Tennessee games that Drew was going back to the teams they beat, but the teams they lost to. Let's go back to the Jets.
Cincinnati lost to the Jets.
Hold on. They lost to. They beat the Jags. They beat the not Titans. They beat the Houston Texans twice. But they had close games against the Saints, 21-23. That was a home game. They lost to the Patriots. They lost to the Steelers. You lose to the Steelers.
So did we twice.
Yeah, but when you have a running back like Henry, you shouldn't.
They had half the year.
Half the year. Yeah, he had 8 games. He played 8. He missed 8.
There's 9.
Let me summarize what James is saying by what Chuck is saying, and that's that the Titans have 2 IAA teams in their division.
It's very true, Chuck. Good point.
They got a wash-up wide receiver. They got a running back coming back, which I don't think he's going to be a big factor because I don't think they're going to just throw him out there to the Wolves to be like running over stuff because it's not right. But I think Cincinnati's hot, and they're the team going in. So like how the Ravens were in 2000, that they could be a deadly force. Their offense looks unstoppable. So I have Cincinnati winning fairly high game, 34-21. I have Cincinnati.
All right, let's move on to the other game in the AFC. You got the number 2 seed, right? Kansas City Chiefs taking on the number 3 seed Buffalo Bills. We all just talked about how good Buffalo looked in that first week. But to your point, against the Titans, when they played the Titans, they looked totally lost, right? So we've seen both sides of Buffalo this year. But right now they are playing hot. And this Kansas City team, though, is rolling. You know, they Kelsey and all the comments that we made early on in the year, and it felt like their offense had kind of taken a step back and all that stuff. Well, you can throw all that out the window. They're firing on all cylinders. They don't have a great running game, but again, when you have Patrick Mahomes out there, anything can happen, and he will make do with just about any wide receiver that he's got out there. The only thing I question with Kansas City still is their defense. So that is going to be the ultimate factor. I think the Bills are a better rounded team, offensively and defensively. So I'm going to give the Bills a slight edge in this one. I've got them winning 30-27.
All right, I'll let Drew go. Go ahead.
Oh, great! Put me on the spot because it's a tough one because I wish this was the AFC Championship game because I think these are the two best teams in the AFC. So it is tough to pick, but I'm not going to go against my boy yet. So I got Kansas City still winning, pulling it off, 30-26 game.
All right, James.
Some random score.
I have this is a different year for the Bills. I've talked to Chuck earlier. They look phenomenal. Like even the run game looks decent compared to last year. But we haven't even talked about Diggs. Diggs wasn't even brought up last game. And he's a number one that could break out for 2 touchdowns this game, period. I think Buffalo has the upper edge on defense.
Yep.
Kansas City's going to have to throw it because their running game is suspect, whoever they're going to put back there. McKinney looking good back there, but you're playing the Bills, number one defense. And I think it's going to be a better game for the Bills, and I think they can straight up dominate this game, sort of like what they did with the New England. And I think it's going to be a totally different game compared to last year. And I have it winning 37-31.
Bills. Okay. Scott, what do you got?
I think that you've got both high-powered offenses that seem to be clicking right now, right? And they're going to be going. Obviously, the Bills at this point we know are the better defense. I think that defense is going to win out, but I still think this is going to be a shootout. 42-38 Bills.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't expect so many people to be on the Bills in this one. I thought I was going to be the lone guy there, but okay. I like it.
All right. Let's shift to the NFC, the Saturday matchup, which is going to be the primetime game, as you got the 49ers going into Green Bay to play. I'll let James start us off with this one. James, where are you looking at with this one?
Discount double check. That's all I have to say. It's going to be a quick, easy, cold game for Aaron Rodgers. I think the 49ers are going to come in there. Jimmy G is going to be Jimmy G and just show up how he is with his sprained shoulder. You got to just keep an eye on Samuel, and that's it. And then the game's over. Just give it to Aaron Rodgers, to Devontae Adams or Jones, and the game's over. But you got to keep an eye on Samuel. That's it.
What do you got the score?
So I have the score 41-24.
Wow. Okay. Drew, what do you got happening in this game?
All of this have been like high scoring, but just not close at all.
Right.
It's like the real high scoring close ones. I'm like, yeah, it's a high scoring game. Oh, they win by 12. No. But yeah, discount double check. That's my other guy. I'm not going against him. I think whether people dislike him or not, and you can have your reasons. He's a bit of a douchebag. I've kind of like soured him a little bit towards that this year, but man, Aaron Rodgers got something to prove. And down the stretch, the last couple of months, I mean, yeah, you had like you played a close game against the Ravens. I get it; they've had some close games, but they gutted out one way or the other, and it's through his leadership.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Like, and that defense is, I think Za'Darius is back, so that extra week gave Za'Darius more time. It gave Zaire Alexander some more time. I think they're kind of like Tennessee trying to get all their pieces together, like the Bills getting all their pieces together for the run just in time. So I got Green Bay winning. I got to come up with a score, but I'll go with 70-10 now. I got it. Packers 35-20, and like James said, one last thing. James said the only guy that can really break it open for me for the Niners is Debo.
Yep.
I was talking about it at the Packers game. I was like, boy, if they run into 49ers at the right time, maybe that could be the only team that really stops them in the NFC. But like I said, you lock him up, yeah, I think they're good.
I'll go. I agree with you guys. I think it's Aaron Rodgers here, but I think they squeak it out. I think that you're going to see this San Francisco team. They've been doing well, and I don't know that we've seen anybody be able to handle Debo at this point. So what makes me think that Green Bay can do it? There's nothing that tells me that Green Bay is going to be in a position to be able to hold Debo Samuel down, because nobody else has really been able to do it either, especially over the past 6 weeks, let's say. So I'm going to say it's going to be a close game. I'll go 28-24 in favor of the Packers.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's going to be a close game. I didn't think the 49ers would even be here. I honestly thought that the Cowboys were going to figure out a way to beat them, but Dallas will be Dallas, man. Dak Prescott will be Dak Prescott. That team can't win when it comes to the playoffs if their life's dependent on it, man. It's rough.
I love it. Keep it happening.
To all of your points, I absolutely love Deebo Samuel and just his versatility and how they use him. I know we talked a lot about like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if the Ravens kind of did something similar to with Duvernay and running different formations with him that way. Deebo Samuel is on another level than Devin Duvernay. I understand that we can use him in different packages and stuff, but Deebo Samuel, there's not many guys like him. And I do think Deebo Samuel can keep this team in this game. Let's not forget, San Francisco's defense is not terrible. They've got good edge rushers, which is going to obviously create some issues for Aaron Rodgers. I think he'll do enough to keep him in this game, but because this game is in Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers is on a mission, man. He's obviously his tenure in Green Bay is in question right now. Does he end up going? Christ, please don't let him go to Pittsburgh and end up with the Steelers next year. I hope he stays in Green Bay and he finishes out his legacy there. He brings them another Super Bowl or whatever. Just stay the hell out of the AFC North. But I think the Green Bay Packers will do enough to win this game. I've got them winning 27-23.
Mark my words right now, the MVP is going to win them a Super Bowl and walk away just to shove it to them.
Could potentially happen. You never know. There's been a lot of controversy there.
Last NFC game is going to be that Sunday matchup, 3:00. You got the Rams hot off of their win over the Cardinals, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'll go ahead and start with this one, and I think it's going to be an interesting game. Is Donald playing in this game? Right? Is a suspension served in this game? Does he appeal it and get out of it for this game? We shall see as the week goes on. But I do think you can't ignore what's happening in Tampa. Right? I want to say that they are like middle to lower end of the pack as far as how much of their cap space they've actually spent. A lot of people think they're crazy amount of cap space that they've spent. They have somewhere in the range of, I think, $4 to $5 million still in their cap available that they haven't hit. So compared to some other teams, including the Ravens, they're in much better position that if they wanted to do something going into the playoffs, they technically could. But I really think that Tampa's able to pull it out. They have a lot of weapons. They can click at the right time. They can have guys be next man up. And it's been interesting to see almost as if another dynasty is being built down there in Tampa. So I think this is going to be interesting, but I will say Tampa Bay is going to pull this one out. I'll go not far off from my other score. I'll go 27-23 on this one in favor of Tampa. Fred, who do you have on this one?
Man, so this is tough, and I've been back and forth on this, because I've been high on the Rams all year. I was high on the Rams in the preseason. But we've also seen Matt Stafford be Matt Stafford at times, right? And I know they played great in this past week against the Cardinals, and he looked great. And Odell Beckham, you can obviously tell the issue was Cleveland and not Odell Beckham. Like, he's fit in nicely there, and he looks more like his old self. Cam Akers, getting him back, I think, is huge to add to that run game. Just not just as a runner, but as a pass catcher, even out of the backfield. Like, he just adds another level to their offense. I don't know. This is tough. Then again, it's against the greatest of all time, and it's fucking Tom Brady, and it's Rob Gronkowski. Chris Godwin's obviously probably going to be out for this game, I think, right? Is he done for the year? Yeah, so he's done for the year. Okay. So Mike Evans, I don't know if he's enough.
Johnson, it's a hodgepodge.
It is, man. But now, if there's anybody that can make it work with a hodgepodge of wide receivers, it's Tom Brady, right? So that's where I'm like back and forth on this. But I'm gonna go upset here, man. I'm gonna say that Matt Stafford in this offense gets enough done. I think they win this game 30-28. We'll keep it another 2-point game. Keep it
even
close.
in Tampa.
In Tampa, I think. Yeah, I like Sean McVay. I like that offense. I like I said, I've been buying into the Rams since day one.
This game's in LA. I'm right there with you. But being in Tampa, that stadium's been rocking the past several games.
Drew, what do you got?
I hate Tom Brady. I'm tired of it. I think they're going to win, but I'm not going to pick them because I'm tired of it. So I'll just get that out of the way. I got Rams. It's going to be a close one, and I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as we may really think. I think there's going to be one of the more low scoring games of the week because these are two really good defenses, and it's two really good quarterbacks. But sometimes this kind of things kind of negate each other, and when it comes to the crunch time of the playoffs, it's that defense that matters. We say it all the time: defense wins championships. So I think the Bucs the way they looked against Philadelphia, it was great, but it was Philadelphia. Maybe Stafford's got something to prove. I think he's got to try. It's one of those players that got to get that monkey off the back. Sometimes you just now it's crunch. It's like you could be thinking this is my last year. So while I think it's going to be the Rams, I think it's going to be a tight one. It's going to be 23-20, and it's going to be a late field goal.
So you got the Rams winning 23-20, you said?
Yeah.
All right, I like it. James, what do you got?
Excuse me. I have this being a close game as well. I just love everything that's going on with LA right now. I think Tom Brady's ship has sailed, even though they have a boat there. I'm not worried.
I see what you did there.
I'm not worried about Tampa Bay fans. They're just, they're just like Ray fans. They just show up. They just show up they just show up. I think there'll probably be a lot of Ram fans down there, and I think it's gonna be a difference. Tom Brady's gonna need to find some kind of weapons to throw to, but I think the Rams have the upper hand on offense and defense. And Cam is a big part of this because if you have him thrown out to the backfield, they can stop the run, but him coming out of the backfield, I think, gives another weapon. And the OBJ has been looking like giant OBJ. So it could be ugly or it could be a close game. But I had the Rams winning this too, a close game, 31-28.
Okay.
Field goal too. But like I said, this is probably going to be a really good game to watch.
All right. Well, Drew, I know you got to step away.
Right back,
Yeah, Drew's got to step away for a second because we're going to put him backstage for a minute. So just a three-headed monster as it is right now. Let's do a quick social media shout-out.
Yeah.
I know there has been a ton in the chat room.
There has, man, and we appreciate you guys being patient with us. This virtual setup isn't as easy for us to interact in the chat room as it is when we're in the studio there. So I'm going to try to go down this list here. Matt Talley, man, good to see you, brother. He was the guy I started the podcast with, so good to see you in the chat room. Alex Devon, David Missler, John Googs, as always, Mr. Freestyle. I've never seen him in the chat room before, so appreciate you checking us out, man. It looks like you're doing it on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Give us that thumbs up for the like, man. Appreciate it. Let's see. Who else? Chuck Summers, as always. Alex Devon. I don't know if I said his name yet. I'm not sure.
Andrew Sakura.
Andrew Sakura. Yep, you got it.
Obviously, the man Garnett West.
Shell and Tell's out there. So Ryan and the girls, Emma and Lily. Craig Zero, as always.
I think you said David Missler already, but
I did.
See, he's been chiming in a lot in there.
Yep. And appreciate all the comments coming in when Bobby was in the room. Hopefully we answered a lot of your questions. We tried to work some of the questions in just in the flow of the conversation. So appreciate it and hope you guys like that content. We're going to try to have more guests, especially through this slower time of the year, where we can try to fill in and get more opinions than just the 5 of us that, the same opinion every week.
Yeah. And obviously with us not being here, a little harder, obviously, with the Liquor Stop Brew of the Week, but we all are fueled tonight. Fred, what are you fueled on tonight?
So I am fueled on honey. So, the normal, the American honey for me, when I go virtual, it goes honey on ice, no mixer, no nothing. That's just my style.
You said you're on honey. I thought that was a COVID thing.
No, not a COVID.
You're just doing spoonfuls of honey.
This is actually no, this isn't the first alcoholic beverage I've had since COVID. This is actually, I don't know a number, but I've had a few. James, though, more importantly, has got the drink that I've been wanting to try. Tell him about what you're drinking on, James.
I'm drinking the new Bud Light Seltzer Hard Soda.
And I'm not a seltzer guy, but these hard sodas have appealed to me because I've always liked the whole Not Your Father line and everything.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to try these. Are they good?
Yeah, like I said, they're more like a RC Cola taste, not like a Coke or a Pepsi. I did enjoy it. It's 0 sugar, and it's got 100 calories. So if you're looking for your body.
Look at James being healthy while drinking.
I like it.
I like it.
I got the variety pack. It came with, so this is it right here. It came with orange soda, citrus soda, and a cherry Coke.
So, all right, so cherry, orange, and basically Sprite.
Sprite, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. Nice.
So
well,
I tried the Coke. I'm gonna save the cherry Coke for last because I love cherry Coke.
I love cherry Coke.
I like cherry Pepsi, but cherry Coke's my main go-to. But yeah, delicious, and I'll be drinking these now through summer. So I might have to stock up just in case they're hard to find during the summertime. But yeah, great.
What are you sipping on over there, Scott?
Well, I got this is I went in, since we've been doing craft beers. I went craft beer, but I went a craft beer that I know that I like from Union Brewing Company. It's their Duck Pin Pale Ale. I really like this stuff. This is good stuff. I also have for if I want to take a shot, I got a thing of Jack, but it's Jack Tennessee Apple. Keep getting rid of the false. Yeah, I guess it's a little clear because of the green screen effect. But yeah, so yeah, I've got a few little things I'm sipping on over here. Drew, you been sipping on anything during the show?
So I'm looking. Are you drinking that Not Your Father's root beer?
No.
Oh, no. Dave Mister brought it up. I like. Remember we were talking about it last night, setting up for the show. I went to the grocery store. I wish. I went to the liquor store. I'm like, I was singling that out. I had to go to one I never really go to because my normal one, I need to get in and get out so I get to get kids. Man, I was still like that. I wanted Not Your Father's root beer in like the worst way. And they didn't have it.
That stuff is delicious.
It's a orange crush cider. It's not bad, but it's a little bit. Kind of feels a little watered down. It doesn't feel real like cider. Like cider, I think of I always like drinking Angry Orchard. Like got that little kick to it,
right?
Like a spice to it. Like this, it's kind of. It really just feels like it's an alcoholic orange soda. And I've had one. I think it's Henry's brand.
Yeah, Henry's is decent.
It's almost like you know what I mean. Like if you had this and you were looking at Henry's, just pick Henry's because this. I mean, it was good, but it's not great.
You can pound Henry's.
Right, exactly.
Henry's, yeah.
Well, either way, if you're in the Bel Air or Forest Hill area, make sure you get by Liquor Stop. Tell them Birdland BS sent you. Get your 10% off. All right, fellas, it's time for some bros, bows, and O's, man.
What? Did I just hear you say that correctly?
Bows, bros, and O's, whatever.
No, you said it correctly. I'm just surprised you're letting us do this segment.
It's been a while, man. We hadn't had a whole lot to talk about with the Orioles.
News for a change, all right?
Well,
Fred, you sit aside. Drew and I'll handle this.
Speaking of changes,
Right. I'm going to lay this out there because I'm very intrigued to get your guys, specifically you two, your opinion on this, because the Orioles were creating a lot of buzz around town, especially on social media. It was seemingly a out of left field announcement. Team is restructuring the home run wall dimensions in left and left center field, pushing the wall back close to 30 feet. And raising the wall height from 7 feet to 12 feet. I want to first get your first thoughts when you heard this, because I know Scott obviously had concerns about his seats. And then now that you've had a chance to kind of see the renderings and let it sink in, has your thought process changed at all?
So initial gut was just kind of like, what? Wait a second, right? For me, it's the traditional. I've been same seat since '92, right? My dad has had those seats. He started with my uncle. Then I started going, and it's same exact spot, right? And perspective, right? Fred, you were kind of laughing at my dad and I when we were out there, but you started to see it when you sit in the same spot. You can start picking out the strike zone, right? You can start looking at things like that. So it's a change in experience for us because now we're going to be back in what used to be row 14. We were in row 4. We're moving back with the equivalent of 10 rows if all the seats were still there. Our proximity to the field, we're still going to be 4 rows off the field.
Right.
I think we're going to be in prime home run territory at this point because that was one of the things I was thinking about, and somebody still hasn't done it. But I'm going to trust in Elias, trust in what him and Sig are doing. That they've looked and analyzed and said this. If we push this back, it'll reduce the home runs because you won't have some of those front wall home runs. I think that happens more so in the corner, which again, still getting extended. So the wall is actually moving back 26 and a half feet. That was the final rendering with it was reported a 12-foot wall. It will actually be a 13-foot high wall that'll come up to the edge there. The way that it goes back and it shifts back, they didn't want to change people's vision of the field. So that's why they went with the 13 over the 12. I know it's only a foot difference, but it's a row.
And from a visual standpoint, for those that are having a trouble figuring out what 13 feet looks like,
they went from 7.
It's more than double, right? But a basketball rim is 10 feet. And if you think of you trying to run up and dunk a basketball, this is going to have 3 feet above that. So all those potential home run robs and stuff like that are going to be non-existent.
Yeah. If anything, you're going to see, stuff bouncing off the wall a little bit more. We're going to see, they're going to have to learn to play that wall. It's going to be interesting to see. I think the other factor that I got when, I don't know if you guys watched or listened to Elias and Sig when they did talk about this during their presser, they were talking about why they went with this and why they did keep the harsh angle in there at the bullpen. They're not doing an angle into the bullpen corner. They're actually going with a harsh L, 90 degrees both ways. So it'll be 90 degrees in, changed. 90 degrees out. And the reason that they did that was because it's worked at PNC Park, right? And the question was raised about injury during that. And I thought their take was interesting in that there hasn't been a situation, and think about how long PNC Park has been around. It's been around for a little bit now. You haven't had any injuries. I think the harder part here for fans to get over is the idea that we have guys, and not just our guys, but guys throughout the AL East that have gotten used to those dimensions, and now you're changing them literally overnight for them, right? They're going to get out there, they're going to be able to practice, but think about their practice time. By the time that's done, if it is done by opening day, and if opening day starts on time, these guys are going to have a day, maybe, to get out there and start practicing against that corner, against stuff off the wall. It's going to be something interesting. They do have dimensions set up in Sarasota to kind of start getting used to that and playing with it. But the problem is playing it off a chain link fence ain't nothing like playing it off a padded wall with concrete behind it. There's a big, big difference there.
So, Drew, I want to get your take on this too, because honestly, just for me, it wasn't as much as a surprise that they made this change. I mean, when you think of Mike Elias and the outfield field wall in Houston and the changes that they had. They had a
Getting rid of Towles Hill.
They had a hill in center field, for Christ's sake, right? So the change doesn't surprise me. Yeah, the angle of the wall, the harshness of that visually is hard to wrap your mind around. I did think that they would push the bullpens back or rearrange the bullpens in some sort of way to kind of ease that transition a little bit. I think personally, I'm for it because, yeah, I mean, listen, they need to attract free agent pitching, and they haven't been able to do that in a very long time because it is a bandbox of a stadium, and no free agent pitcher or a pitcher even on a 1 or 2 year deal is going to want to sign here in Baltimore and take the risk of having their ERA get blown up because of easy home runs in left field. So I understand why they did it. Drew, what was your take on the whole situation?
The only definition I can literally come up with is bipolar. Because I don't know yet. So when it first came out, I'm like, I thought, it's a hoax. Okay, whatever. And then even when it came out, I'm like, okay, so 30 feet. Okay, so or maybe you're losing 5 rows, 6 rows. And then it's like, are we going to raise the wall? Well, it's like, well, if you're moving it back, what do you really need to raise the wall for? Like, wouldn't that kind of have the same effect? And then you see, like, well, like we saw, like it was like you saw pictures of like 15 rows of seats across 6 sections, like just gone, and you're like, what did this just become? Like I really don't know. Like I don't know how to describe it other than bipolar, because I just like, what is going on? Like, wait, you're changing it. I'm not one to think like, oh, obviously I'm a Oriole fan, so I'm not like, oh, same old fucking Orioles are doing stupid shit without any consequence and any planning to it. So that's when it brings me back to the good side of it. Like, look, all along the way, whether you like it or not, and whether you're a real fan or a fair weather fan or you're just too frustrated, pretty much everything Elias has said has happened. Now, granted, any change to the stadium wasn't ever really discussed publicly that I remember, but the rebuild has gone a lot faster than you would expect. Anyone would have expected after having COVID shortened seasons and not having a real minor league camp and things just being different. It's far you would not have expected them to be the number 1 farm system in basically 2 years. Like, that's a hard thing to pull off. Right. So he did that part of it. They, it talked about an academy and stuff down in the Dominican and then for the Caribbean. That's happening, or that's already in the process of. And they talked about spending more in the international market. And I know we're going to end up getting to that too. Yep. But I use it as a prop to say everything that they have said has come to fruition. Like, they're not, like, nothing's really wavered, whether you really want to like it or not, or you want to harken back to the early 2000s. It's completely different situations, but a lot of people want to harken on that. So with that said, if what he is saying and what him and Midal and some of these other guys are coming out and saying as, look, this is going to benefit our team as we built it. And if you look at their prospect list at the top prospects, it's a good pitching, obviously, with Rodriguez, Hall, and some others. You got it, Rutschman, he's a switch hitter, but then you got Kauser, you got Cursed, you got these left-handed bats, power bats, because that's what they were saying. They were going for college power bats. So if what they're working towards is now, the lefties and the pitching, moving that wall back, if that entices more, to bringing in starting pitching like we talked about, and then it helps the young guys, and then now you got the lefties, or you got Mullins. How many opposite field home runs do you see from Mullins? He switched to left, and it was a fucking godsend. Yep. He was the Oriole MVP. So I changed my mind on it, because at first I was just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why are we changing the best stadium? I get it. There's hard times, and maybe the way the stadium is built and plays, that doesn't help the team out. But then I was like, all right, well, let's see what it was. And then it was like, oh, that's pretty dramatic. Like, do you really need to have like a high 13-foot wall? So now I'm back to, let's let it play out. I mean, one, we don't know when the fuck they're going to play, which is aggravating that you haven't heard anything. I know you've had lockouts in the past, you might not have heard anything. Well, media nowadays can find someone throw a paper ball on the ground and not pick it up. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you haven't heard anything about the lockout, so it just brings me back to like I'm more scared about the lockout than anything. But like, let's let it play out and let's see if it helps the team. I mean, you're at a point where a lot of the guys that are going to be on this team anyway, going forward, never played with the left field that was there. They're going to be playing with the left field that is there. And if it benefits the roster and what you have, maybe it's going to be. And if not, we'll see. It could still be the home run just sales because that's just where the shit's built, and because they built a hotel, it changes things. It is what it is. So literally, I've got long-winded because I guess we haven't really talked about it. But literally, the definition for me handling is bipolar, because I does waver sometimes when I see like the drawings and the dimensions. It's like, what are you guys doing? Like, I think of how ugly, and anyone's been there. Fenway Park is horrible, and I know it's like the difference between the monster and this wall, but I just mean like kind of making the weird dimensions and having a pole be a little further down than where the rest of the wall is in one side of the field. So it's a little bit scary to think of like maybe it's too much of a change, but I mean, I'm one that's kind of blindly followed Elias no matter what this whole thing, because pretty much everything that he's ever talked about is coming to fruition or has already come to fruition.
So, James, I also want to get your quick opinion on it too, but just to go back, you were talking about the wall increasing and why would they do increasing the wall to 13 feet. I think that's just a byproduct of them pushing the back 30 feet, because when you go back 30 feet, in order to level that out, you'd have to change the entire foundation of the stadium. And oh my God, the amount of money that would go into having to do that. It was just a byproduct of them having to do that. And I don't think that was another factor in like, oh, we could eliminate X more home runs by raising it 13. I think that's just what happens when you push back.
No, and they said it was somewhat, it was mainly a byproduct of the fact of how much they wanted to move it back without changing the fan sightline and the fan experience from that perspective.
Exactly. So, James, what was your take on it?
I was like, because Scott just puts it in there, like they're moving taking 30 feet back and they're moving this. I'm like, what the fuck are they doing? And then I'm like, I'm all for it, because now it changes the whole ballpark. It's a new stadium in my mind. But things are going to have to change, I think, throughout the years of playing that wall. Like, I would look at PNC Field. Like, they're going to have to make the bullpen, I think, have to have like a cage netting with padding around it so you can see through it to be able to see what's going on. I think that's going to have – they're not going to be able to put padded walls on the bullpen side around to the front of the bullpen. They're going to have to open that up and put like a sort of like a fence with the padding around it to be able to see what's going on if a guy got knocked out or have to help him out or whatever, like how it's PNC. And also, if you recall, they had to do something like that for Philly Stadium. The outfield, something with it, that guy came crashing, broke his nose, and they had to change the way that the outfield was there. But it's going to change the ballpark for all the fans that are true baseball fans. Know that ball is a home run. Now it'd be like, I don't know, it might hit off the wall. You're gonna see, like Scott said, you're gonna have to play that wall now, and it's great for pitchers coming up, because you're not throwing that ball and boom, it's out in the fucking stands, and your head's like, I'm fucked. I'm going back down. Like you have a chance to build pitching and make them feel comfortable. And it gives it a different look for a ballpark. I'm all for it. But like I said, we're going to lose seating, so it's going to help fill the stands in.
It's only losing about 1,000
seats, I think.
Yeah, but that's 1,000 that don't show up. So maybe fill it in, make it look better. But I'm all for it. I think it's great for it's a win-win.
Well, if Delvin Young could come back, that's a triple from the 2014 playoff game.
All right, so
my buddy, real quick, I want to give him a shout out. My buddy Matt Talley says, we call Opacity the ballpark that changed baseball, but baseball adapted. Future stadiums learned the flaw, and they've waited decades because of nostalgia and tradition.
So here's the one thing I'm gonna say to all of that.
Here comes the traditionalist.
It's a little bit of a traditionalist, but I don't think it's going to be the traditionalist take that you're expecting. Is this where MLB yet again continues to get it wrong? Think about professional sports. Think about if the Ravens were able to say, we're going to change and adjust the length of the field. We're going to adjust the width of the field, right? Every other sport has standards of this is what it is. And that's what makes baseball different. And to an extent, it's what makes it great. But to an extent, that's also the flaw of it, because you can have teams like the Orioles now who are saying, okay, we're going to do it. And I forget who said it in our chat. It was about, right, it's because I think it was Ryan, actually. It's because they don't want to spend the money on all the higher end pitchers, right? Because you're going to have to, in order to even get them there, you're going to have to pay more money because they're going to want more money in order to play in that park.
Got to overspend. Right.
So is that where, this is my open quick question for you guys, and I know I say quick, but it's going to open up a can of worms, I think. But is this where baseball gets it wrong by not having uniform dimensions in every ballpark and providing advantages and disadvantages?
They got rid of that, Scott.
I love how we all just
I mean, never had it.
That is one of the appeals.
Cincinnati, Philadelphia, all these.
They were playing football stadiums.
Utility stadiums were basically the same.
But they were not the same dimensions. The team had the ability to say, we're going to change ours this way. We're going to change ours this way so that this set of seating can be pushed back. If you go back and you look at the dimensions, as far as the seating bowl and the multi-purpose use, the dimensions themselves were, they did vary, but it was also the position of the corners. It was where people were putting foul poles. It was how much extra room out in the center field. Some of those multi-purpose stadiums were almost 500 feet going out. Think of the old Comiskey Park. Right?
Polo Grounds. One of my favorite stadiums of all time.
The Polo Grounds was 540 yards.
We all
feet.
change. Everything changes for a reason.
I do not think that the cookie cutter approach to all stadiums is the right answer. Again, you're talking
you don't
about
think it creates competitive balance.
No, it's one of the things that makes baseball unique, and it's one of the actual appealing things about baseball. And baseball doesn't need to do anything to cloud their appearance any more than they already have. I think having that uniqueness of each stadium. Could you imagine if Fenway Park was just a normal cookie cutter stadium and didn't have that wall out there? Like, that's the beauty of baseball, is the uniqueness to it.
And Scott, take it to it. What happened if golf was all the same?
Yeah.
Like no one wants to do it. Being a ballpark is different from a soccer field and a football field. Like everything's different. You have to play each stadium differently. So it gives you advantage to the home team compared to the away team coming in there. And I like not every ballpark looking alike, because that's why Camden Yards was one of the first to change what people are building new stadiums today, because of what the Orioles did.
Yeah, they were a trendsetter for sure. All right, let's move on, because we're going to be on this for a while. And we'll have weeks and weeks to talk about this, because they're still doing construction, right? But we talk about buying into Elias and buying into this vision, and obviously this stadium adjustment is part of that. Well, one of the big changes that Elias and crew has made has been diving into the international market, right? And, they talked about that from day one, that was going to be an emphasis, and we've seen that over the first few years through the Elias regime. Well, it continued this year. It continued this week as they signed almost, I don't know the exact number, but
24.
It was 24. I was going to say it was close to 25 international prospects this week. And there's a few guys on this list. Now, listen, when they sign mass, international players like this, the majority of these players will never even see the light of day of AA baseball. So temper expectations, right? And try to, you're hoping for a 20%, attrition out of this list. And where you see, diamonds in the rough, right? Where we weren't even taking these swings before, right? Now we're taking these swings, and if we can turn a 24-man list into 4 or 5 legitimate, solid prospects, that's a win for this organization. You got a organization that was a bottom dweller for so many years in minor league rankings. They were just ranked by Major League Pipeline as the number one minor league system in baseball. That's a long way in a short period of time that they've turned things around. And they've added a couple of big names in this. And it starts with outfielder Braylon Tavera. He's a 16-year-old out of Dominican Republic. He's the number 18 international prospect per Baseball America, number 22 per MLB Pipeline. This is the 5-tool potential kind of guy. He's got a little bit of everything, strong bat-to-ball skills, consistent approach to the plate backed by improving pitch recognition. Defensively, profiles like a center fielder, highest paid international signee in club history. This is a big get, I think, for the Orioles.
Yeah, this guy is going to bring a lot to the table. I think, when you look at his youth, right? Him being in that 16 range, he's that young kid that he can still develop, but he's going to be down there in that international talent facility that they're continuing to build and continuing to grow. So it's going to be interesting to see what he brings to the table as he continues to develop. A guy that I've got my eye on is the second baseman, Cesar Prieto. And Drew, I think you had posted or retweeted a video of him hitting within the new facility. This guy is a left-handed bat. And honestly, smooth swing. When you watched him drop the bat, hit the ball, it was head of the bat to the ball, and you don't see that many smooth, and I'll call it natural swings, right? We all know who we call the natural swing, right? It was Griffey. This guy, I mean, he has a pretty good, smooth, natural swing. There's no hitches in his swing, no, arms moving up or all around. It's just bat to the ball and straight on through. So it looks good. He's a kid that I think when you look at what he's brought to the Cuban National Series, he hit 403, 463, 579 during that 2021 season and won the batting title in the league.
Yep.
Right.
Also broke the Cuban rookie hit record. So, I mean, to your point, this guy is a great hitter. He's got good hand-eye coordination.
Good vision.
And he's 22 years old, right? This is a kid that could potentially impact the major league roster pretty soon.
Sooner rather than later, yeah.
Yeah, most of these guys on this list are the younger variety, the 16, 17, 18-year-olds that are going to be 3 to 5 years out, right? You won't hear these guys for a while. But Cesar Prieto, I think he's even getting a potential invite to training camp or to spring training this year with the Orioles. So I'm not saying he's going to break camp, but at a position of need, we all saw the revolving door at second base this year, right? That is a position that they absolutely need. This is a guy that could fill that void.
Well, and you can't balk at the fact that this guy's coming from the Cuban league, and the talent overall in that Cuban league. Yeah. There's a reason why these guys are so highly valued and paid the way that they are to come into the international signings, because there's a lot of competition. And when you're putting up those type of numbers against some of that competition, imagine what you can do when you get to the major league level with a little bit of scouting, a little bit of help. It's going to be interesting to see what happens.
What's your take on this list, Drew, as you've kind of looked through things and read some of the stuff that you've heard on these guys? Are you excited about some of these guys? Are you excited about this list?
Look, when you are a team that's never done any, like almost basically nothing, the bottom of the barrel from that region. I'm not talking about no Korean guys. It was, cool. Hung So Kim, it was fun. Or,
Wei Yin Chen.
Like, you've had, the Duquette did his little Duquetteisms down there with that whole thing, but you never had a presence here at all. So when you hear 24, when you have that mindset and you hear 24 players, to a normal fan, it might not really make a lot of sense. Because like you said, you signed 24 guys. Maybe you only ever hear 5 guys. So
right.
2 guys and 3 other guys we've heard of. And the 3 other guys, you might not really ever, you might hear them, they got Rule 5 by somebody and they had a good couple months, and 4 years from now, and that's it. And that's all you really hear of them. So it literally, like I said already, like Elias said they were going to spend, they're finally doing it. And it sounds just cool to hear that, they took all that international pool money they had, every single dollar that they had for the international pool money, and they spent it. How many times, and granted this is before Elias, how many times did the Orioles have this international pool money and it's like fucking monopoly money?
Yep.
And 14
traded away.
And the normal fan just thinks, Orioles holding that money, put in their pockets. Well, that money wasn't going to nobody's pockets. Like, it's not like you're saving any money. It's really not that much money in the grand scheme of things.
And to your point, Drew, 14 of these 24 signings, 14 of them are guys that are the age of 16.
Yep.
And that's a big deal because it's 16. It's young. It's 16. But
that means they might be ready to go by 20.
For fuck's sake. I mean, look, Juan Soto, Goog said
prime example.
The Nats just signed his brother. They had the end a little bit. They had the brother. But you look at that guy. You look at a guy like that, and I know he's got legacy, but you look at a guy like Tatis, who like comes in and has like not even a real like year and a half of like real solid at bats, and he's like a star. Granted, hopefully the injuries don't catch up with him, and then you run that risk with any sport anyway. But when you look at the top two guys, because that's the main thing I want to look at, even though you guys already talked about him. The best thing about it for me is you look at like Prito, where he's already in his 20s.
Yep.
And that's not a bad thing. That means you're not waiting as long, like you've already said. And I really think like you're gonna see something out of there. It's blindly. I don't know anything. These guys, obviously, I don't go down to Cuba to scout these guys. You know what I mean? But
wait, I thought you just came back on a flight. Aren't you going back down? Aren't you going to Florida?
I take my trips to Disney, man. If these Cuban kids are walking around Disney, I'll talk to them if I find them. You know what I mean?
Well, I'll tell you what, you won't miss this kid with his hair that he's got. This guy's got fantastic hair.
Like, and look, that's another like a funny thing. Like you used to always kind of like the Orioles, kind of like not as bad as the Yankees, but it was always kind of like clean cut and all that.
Yeah,
and like
certain
you're not
image.
seeing that anymore. So that's some cool little things to think about too. Which it's just cool if you're a fan like us, to sit here and not. When it came to this point of the season, we would have never talked about an international signing period.
Yep.
Ever.
Absolutely.
And it goes back to whether I'm saying it blindly or not, and maybe I have too much faith, but everything that Elias and his regime has said is coming to fruition. Now you gotta get over that hump, and you gotta put that product on the main squad. I get that, but if you're someone who's on the fence and isn't just completely pessimistic, I think you should be a little excited.
I do too, because
like
I said, I mean, you're talking about the #1 overall farm system in all of Major League Baseball right now, and you just added to that, right? You've got the #1 overall pick in this upcoming draft, so you're only going to add to that even more, right?
Rutschman, you got the #1 prospect.
Right. You got the #1 overall prospect in Adley Rutschman. You've also got the #1 overall pitching prospect in Grayson Rodriguez.
And all four of these guys love that guy.
It's been years and years the last time an organization had the best position prospect and the best pitching prospect on the same organization. Like, it's been years since that happened. But to look at just some of the recent progression in this farm system in 2020, last year, preseason ranked, they were 13th. They had gone up to 13th. By midseason, they were 8th. By 2021 preseason ranked, they were 5th, and now heading into 2022, we're the #1 overall farm system. So if you haven't bought in to the Mike Elias regime and the vision, I don't think you ever will at this point. And it's sad.
You're just fair weather enough, because like people, you got both sides of the coins, and we've talked about it enough, so I'm not saying anything. But you got so many sides of the coins. Forget both sides of the coins. You have got so many people who are, they've been in a rebuilds for 20 years.
Yeah.
Bullshit. First off, what was happening in like 2000
retool
was not. Then you could shit on the Angelos for that kind of thing. Yeah, I get that. But you can't sit there and think, oh, what was going on like the 2000s, or throwing money at Miggy and Palmeiro and Lopez. Just throwing money blindly when, sometimes when you're in a position like the Orioles were at that time, that's what it is. You're throwing money blindly.
Well, you're also trying to put asses in seats.
Yeah,
right?
that too.
That's the other thing that people don't forget is that, yeah, they were in that rebuild, but we call it, they were really retooling the entire time because they were just bringing in guys that they thought could help the organization, but also put some asses in some seats because nobody, it was that situation of, the major league, right? Nobody's going to want to come see these guys play. So you got to bring in people that make the game exciting and bring it to that next level. And that's what these guys are going to help you do from every level, right? You're talking about the ranks with everything. When you look at these guys, we have 5 guys that are in the top 100 on MLB's pipeline, right? So we're talking 32 teams, right? Let's say everything works out. Each team has 3. On average, we have 5, right? That are in that top 100. And when you look at that, 3 of those guys have reached Bowie or higher already.
Yeah, it's not far. It's not far before these guys are going to start to make their impact here. Like we said, you got the number 1 overall prospect in Adley Rutschman, who, mind you, won a Gold Glove in the minor leagues this year. We didn't have a chance to talk about that.
I didn't know that was possible.
I didn't know it was possible.
Yeah, a Gold Glove in the minor leagues. That's because we've just never had anything like that before, right? So you've got that in the barn.
I told my wife Matt Wieters didn't even do that.
You got Grayson Rodriguez, who was absolutely dominant at Bowie this year. You got DL Hall, who just towed the rubber for the first time, I think today or yesterday since his rehab, who was doing really, really well in Bowie before he had the injury. Gunnar Henderson, who showed immense improvement, especially at Delmarva. He struggled a little bit when he got to Aberdeen and Bowie, but started to kind of figure things out.
His glove's great.
Yeah, his glove looks really, really good.
Fielding's going to make up for him when he's trying to assimilate to the upper echelon.
Yep. And then Colton Cowser, the number 1 overall pick that we had this past year. A lot of guys weren't real high on him because they went under slot and all that stuff. But he is just, I kind of compared him when he got drafted to a Markakis and I don't mean that he's going to be Markakis. I think he's got just a similar demeanor, a similar approach. He's not going to wow you with a power bat. He's just a consistent hitter. He takes the same consistent approach at the plate. He's going to, and he's going to do the same thing night in and night out. There's just a lot to really like about him. And we haven't even talked about Heston Kjerstad, who's now coming back from myocarditis. And he was the best left-handed power bat in that draft that year that we took him. So if we can get him back at even 90% of what he was before the issues with the heart condition, things are very, very promising with what's coming. And again, it's not far away.
Well, and that's the thing too.
He wasn't to slouch on either, boy.
That's my guy. That's my guy.
He stays under the radar, but boy, and that when whatever the fuck they're calling it, Gulf Coast or Florida Coast or Florida Man League, I don't know, whatever they're calling it. Yeah, he showed up. He got a chance to finally show up with that. Like, that's another one where the COVID just kind of robs you of that extra time.
Right.
Yeah. So
fortunately enough,
we
got him out of high school, so he's still really young. There are, so I like Kobe Mayo the same way I liked Ryan Mountcastle the day we drafted him. And the reason for that is because I have never seen, at that point, I had never seen them play in person. All I've been able to do is watch video clips on YouTube and social media. But with Ryan Mountcastle and Kobe Mayo, what's similar about them is, you know how they talk about players where the ball just sounds different when it comes off the bat?
They got that pop.
That is Kobe Mayo. Kobe Mayo is the same way. Ryan Mountcastle had that, and you're seeing that at the major league level now. The guy's got ridiculous power. Kobe Mayo can be that next Ryan Mountcastle type of talent at the major league level, I think.
And that's the one thing that's nice too, right? When you look at the guys that we just named off, when you look at, the 24 prospects that are out there, one of the things that you notice is it's not really overloaded in one spot, except for maybe shortstop. But here's the deal. With shortstops, they usually have enough arm strength that you can move them over to third base. Sometimes the transfer happens out into the outfield where they can have the arm strength to be able to get it in. There's a lot of different things that you can wind up seeing come down the pike and wind up happening. It just really depends on how it all plays out. But it's great to see this wealth across the board. It's not just focusing like we've seen in years past on, let's get 12 first basemen. right? Like we get such a backlog in one area that
how many agents can we sign in free agency?
right? Yeah,
3 is the minimum.
To see that and to see that come to fruition, even in the international market, and the spread that we see there are more shortstops than anything else. But again, that's
where they start.
Right, that's a position that you can take.
Yeah, I mean,
remember,
there's shortstop.
They're 16. Some of these guys' arms can develop. And honestly, one of the things you could see is some of these guys, if they've got volume behind or strength behind the arm, I would potentially watch to see one, maybe two of those guys be pushed into, hey, let's see what happens when you get on the mound.
James, did we sell you?
Arm strength.
Did we sell you? Are you excited about this, the changes and the prospects coming up?
I've been all excited about this. Like, I might have to invest in a new Orioles jersey. I'm not talking about getting a player's jersey. I'm talking about getting my own new revamped Oriole jersey to wear out to these games, because I'm telling you, the
Mr.
product.
Pizza John's on the back.
Yeah, the product is coming. Be prepared for sellout tickets again. It's going to happen. You're going to see all the bandwagons coming back. You're going to see Orioles jerseys and hats being number one sellers again. It's coming. Next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see Rushmore jerseys and Rodriguez jerseys all over the map with this guy. So I'm excited. I can't wait. And the popcorn's not going to be stale no more. It's going to be fresh.
I like it, man. I'm pumped for it. I can't wait. All right, fellas, it's time for this week's rundown.
Before we do,
yeah,
you weren't expecting this, but
no.
Let's just take a quick second for you to give the experience that you and your cohort over at Shell and Tell got to have this past week. Exciting piece that you got to share.
Yeah, man, it was pretty awesome. So for you Terp fans out there that haven't had a chance to check it out yet, follow Shell and Tell on all the social media platforms. We just did an interview with Terp's tight end, Chig Okonkwo. And I tell you, it couldn't have been a better interview. The guy is just a total class act. He's easy to talk to. He's well-spoken, very candid, very personable. It was just a really, really fun interview, and we're lining up big things in the future. We've got a lot of contacts out there, a lot of things that we're arranging for more interviews coming with players, either current or connected to the program. So there's a lot of things to be excited about. It was a lot of fun talking to Chig, for sure.
Yeah, exciting. I mean, a guy going into the NFL, you guys get the, a first shot interview. Pretty exciting. So, and Ryan, we did see you. And you were smiling ear to ear the second that you introduced Chig.
Last night, I was like, "Oh my god!" I thought Ryan was going to explode.
He was cheesing from ear to ear.
Yeah, I thought Scott would have a image shot of that just to put up real quick.
If we weren't doing this virtual thing, he would be sitting in the background right now.
I see that. He was like.
he was deer in the headlights with a smile on his face. I told Fred, you could have just put makeup on him because he looked like the Joker smiling the whole time. That's what it looked like. You couldn't have told me he had a frown on. But let's go ahead and get into the rundown.
Yeah, Drew, kick us off, man.
Oh, hell yeah. NHL fucking it up again. Why not?
Sounds about right.
So if our listeners remember, we were talking about I guess a few weeks ago, NHL had this ongoing thing where they really would rather not have the players play in the Olympics. The Olympics is coming up next month.
Right.
So in December late December, with COVID cases on the rise, they decided to take advantage of COVID, in my mind, and finally decide, look, players can't go to the Olympics because we're missing some games. We missed a chunk of games in December for a lot of teams. So we were thinking about making it up. Okay, COVID's on the rise. It makes sense. Maybe you necessarily wouldn't want to take 2 weeks plus off in the middle of your season with having to make it up, and then heaven forbid, COVID spreads at the Olympic event itself.
Right.
Now, I'll play devil's advocate. The CDC has changed their guidelines. We've all known, because I mean, if the place you work, I don't know what I'm trying to say, if where you work at changed your policies like mine. Look, there used to be something, and now it's different because the CDC changed their mind. We've seen it with the NFL. You had a 2 or 3 week stretch there. It was 100 players a day, whether you knew the players or not. It was something's got to change, and it changed with the asymptomatic players. So I get it. You're changing with the CDC guidelines. But now all of a sudden, you're in the home stretch right before the All-Star break, and granted, it's only like a 3-4 day weekend. Oh, it's okay to stop doing the All-Star game. I mean, to stop for the All-Star game and not make up games or anything, but it's not allowed players to go to the Winter Olympics. And like I said a few weeks ago, it's the NHL doesn't get it out of their own way. It's one of the worst commissioners in baseball. I mean, Manfred took that cake over the last couple of years, but before that, it was Bettman, because you already had this argument with the players, this debate you've been having for the last couple of Olympics, and not having these players go way off the Olympic, which is something that they take huge pride in. It isn't I'm getting away. Like these players that get to play for their team, like that's the sense of pride. Like especially a guy like Ovechkin, I want Russia. I want to bring Russia the gold. Like you want to bring them more almost than a Stanley Cup. So the NHL finds a way for you to just go like it's the same old NHL. So like it's just real annoying that like it's not okay to go have a break for the Olympics for pride, but it's okay to start this All-Star game which is almost a little bit closer than the Olympics would be. So to me, it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's still that same look. Like if you're doing it because of COVID, well then you don't have an All-Star game. You pick your All-Star rosters and maybe the alternates or whatever. You want to add a couple extra guys than normal. Whereas sometimes with All-Star games you don't have all the guys don't play. That's fine, but it seems like you're using COVID as a crutch, and I don't like when people and anybody in society uses COVID as a crutch for things. I'm not in favor of it.
I'm 100% on board with you there. It's the moving goalposts. It's just an absolute shit show.
It's like you're just making it up on the fly, and that's
exactly
not good. Like you could shit on the NFL, but it does seem like they made it up on the fly, but it was structured. Where the NHL was just like, it almost felt like, they're doing it and they're doing it and they're doing it, so let's not do it. And then, it changed. Okay, well, let's do this, but you still can't do that.
Right. And it's funny is because when everything first started, you thought the NHL was one of the structures that had organizations that actually had it all figured out. They seemed to have it together in the very beginning. And man, the wheels have fallen off.
Because when they rebooted the season in 2020, they not quickly, but MLB was arguing with each other for like a month and a half, 2 months, and the NHL was formulating that bubble almost before the NBA even was.
Right.
So it's like you formulated that bubble thing, and then you made it work so far. It's just like I said, they find a way to shoot themselves in the foot. That's why they're the number 4, 5, 6 sport.
Moving on from one shit show to another. I mean, the Raiders have always been
say no more.
Yeah, they've always been a bit of a mess of an organization as a whole. I think this season, though, might have taken the cake from the car accident with Henry Ruggs to the gun-wielding social media rant by David Arnett, the former first-round pick, John Gruden resigning after week 5 when leaks of racial
the Washington football team.
Yep, the racial and homophobic emails were found out from the WFT. But somehow they did manage to kind of pull it all together and make the playoffs, but were quickly ousted by the Bengals this past week, which ultimately all of this has led to the firing of GM Mike Mayock after 3 seasons. So now you fired John Gruden, resigned, however you want to look at that.
He gone.
Mike Mayock, all the money that, Christ, John Gruden was a 10-year, $100 million deal, and I don't even know what Mayock's is. It's a shit show. But here the Raiders are with a chance to kind of wipe the slate clean. Obviously, like I said, they did make the playoffs this year despite all that, right? So from a talent standpoint, they're not far from being a year in and year out competitive team, right? If they get the right leadership in there. And there's been a lot of speculation now with Mayock being gone for the potential of Jim Harbaugh returning to the NFL. We talked a little bit about Jim Harbaugh, and if I were the Jaguars, I'd be rolling out the red carpet and doing everything I can to get him to come back, just because the Jaguars are also a shit show of an organization that needs to do something down there. Right now, though, the Raiders are apparently the front runners, and he's getting a lot of endorsements from former alumni of the Raiders, including Charles Woodson, the Hall of Famer, right? I don't know. I think if I'm Harbaugh, I'm entertaining this. Again, you're coming into a situation where there's not a whole lot you can do to fuck it up any worse than it already is, right? So you're only going to get better. And again, you're not that far away from being a competitive team. I'm sure that, again, you'd probably have your say in who you brought in from a front office standpoint and a GM standpoint if you are Jim Harbaugh, because you're going to carry that kind of weight in that organization. I kind of like to see this happen. One, to get him the fuck away from Michigan and open up the door out there for being a Terp fan. But two, I just think Jim Harbaugh was kind of shafted in his run that he had with the 49ers. I thought he did a really good job out there.
That was all Trent Baalke, yeah.
Yeah, it really was. So I think Jim Harbaugh belongs back in the NFL. We'll see what happens with it, though.
Yeah, well, speaking of the NFL and seeing what happens, it's the off season. So our weekly update, I need like a news pressing breaker, right? It's every year. The off season hits, and the NFL has players that don't know how to stay out of trouble.
The sky is blue.
Yeah.
So it's baseball for a second. I love that, like, in our show doc, Scott, for everyone out there, Scott's typing up the story. I'm like, what? Like,
I break the news to Drew.
Broke the story for me.
Yeah. So, according to an online record from the Broward County Sheriff's Office in Broward County, Florida, the Browns defensive tackle Malik McDowell was arrested on Monday on charges of battery on a law enforcement officer, resisting arrest with violence, and public exposure.
He got the whole kit and caboodle there. Good
right?
Lord.
He apparently beat a deputy in a violent attack and left the officer, quote, dazed. And reports are that he's got a $27,000 bond at this point. Chump change for most of those guys at this point, but it is what it is. But it doesn't stop there, because Jacksonville Jaguars linebacker Laurenti McCray, who also is a special teamer for them, was arrested in Central Florida. NFL players in Florida. Doesn't exactly work out. Lamar, come home, please.
Just go to Disney World and everything will be okay.
Yeah. He gets pulled over because he has a high-speed pursuit with police as they attempted to pull him over. He's being released on $5,000 bond. He was charged with fleeing and eluding police with disregard for safety to person or property, which, by the way, is a second-degree felony.
Yeah, I think neither one of these guys have household names. They'll disappear. They'll be gone. The NFL will get rid of these guys. If they had any kind of relevance or any kind of impact, of course, the NFL would bend over backwards for figuring out ways to keep them in the league and brushing this under the rug so that the media doesn't talk about it.
This still goes to me that, like, I get these guys are under contract and under representation of their teams, and I get that you can't, they have to have lives. I get that, right?
Right.
But there needs to be, I don't know, conduct classes held more regularly before the end of the season, before these guys are let go. If you're not a free agent and you represent this team, this is how you're going to continue to conduct yourself. You're a representation of this team when you're out there. If you're doing something that's conduct to the detriment of the team, technically, that's where I think the NFL, could step in and say, if you have conduct detriment to the league or to the team, there's a fine, there's a suspension, whatever it may be. If it's offset and you're in the situation of you're found guilty of these things, it's on you, boss, and we'll give you the tools and give you the coaching to not be put in these situations, but it's on you to kind of go through it. But it's here it is. We haven't even finished the season. We're only a week out of the end of the regular season, and we've got two guys. Starting. Yes, they're nobodies, but two guys that it's already starting. It's only going to get worse.
Sky is blue, grass is green. James, what's going on in the NBA?
I was going to talk about NFL again with AD.
Oh, okay.
No, fuck that guy. Anyway, that guy's just a fuck up. No, we're gonna go with the NBA. Good news is Klay Thompson came back last week, looking good. The only thing is the Warriors got to find like a rhythm, because they were in good rhythm, but with him coming back, I feel like they're trying to push him to put it in the position. But I think they're trying to figure out what works, but they're looking good. They're 3 games back in the West. But on the bad note, KD got hurt. He sprained his MCL. He's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. So this doesn't help the Nets. Between Kyrie Irving can only play out of the New York in certain areas to not being with the team. I think it just messes up the flow. They sit a half game back in first, but they could be slipping down further down, and then you got the All-Star game next month. So we'll see where that leads to, but that's what the NBA is doing right now.
Hey, the Wizards getting healthy. They're looking good again. They hit a rough patch there for a little while, but they're playing good. They're about 8-9 players deep right now. They've got a good roster. I think they'll be, like I said, I think they'll be in the thick of things with the playoffs.
There's going to be some trades coming up before All-Star week. So, especially the LA Lakers making some changes. So
we'll see what happens.
We'll see.
Man, appreciate everybody tuning in this week and bearing with us through our first go at this virtual show. Again, it's been a year since we've done this. We're going to probably do this for a few weeks, maybe about a month total in time, so 4 shows. We appreciate the support as always. Scott, sign us out.
Yeah, again, obviously, we appreciate you guys tuning in. A big thanks to Bobby Trosset, who joined us this week. Great takes from him, great insight, good all-around great guy. Go check him out through all of his social media pages at Bobby WBAL, actually, is how you find him on Twitter, and I believe on Instagram as well. So go check him out there. Make sure you check us out, www.birdlandbs.com. While you're there, you can get yourself all of the Birdland BS gear that we're always sporting, or I'm the only one that ever sports it. I don't know what Drew wears anymore. James has always
sponsorship with someone apparently.
There you go. But yeah, no, go check us out on the website. You can also check out all of our episodes there, the video versions that come from YouTube and Facebook, but as well, you can have the audio versions there. Speaking of the audio version of the podcast, or the show, I say, you can find it on all your podcast platforms. So if we're not on your podcast platform, let us know, but we are on all the major ones. Make sure you drop a review while you're there. It makes it easier for others to find us when they're searching, and also pumps us up in the ratings for those sports shows. So we greatly appreciate that. Make sure you also check us out on all of our social media pages. At Birdland BS is how you find us. If you haven't found us already, I don't know how you're here, but make sure you share it with your friends. Help us grow, and look out for us. And some of us also pop in and do some of these Twitter Spaces and stuff like that. So look out for us on all those. And then make sure you check us out on bigplay.com and the Big Play app. For Fred, myself, Ryan, who's not here, James, Drew, it has been a great show. Getting back to this virtual thing. Stay tuned for the after hours. It's weird. Stay tuned to the after hours, and we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
See ya.
It's time for the after party.
It's last call for alcohol. God,
did you check your phone?
No, I saw Joe's message there, so let me take a look.
Yeah, it is so weird without you guys being down here again. It's like it's
going to take a minute to get adjusted.
It's going to take it, but hopefully we aren't doing it for that long because for those in the after hours, one of the things that hopefully we're
going to opening day with Joe again. Appreciate it, Joe. Hell yeah, I'm on board, man. If you're watching, I appreciate that.
In
as
the
always.
New seats.
Had a great time. Yeah, in the new seats behind the 13-foot wall, 30 feet back.
I'll see how this goes.
And there isn't a season yet.
Hey, Fred, make sure you don't
playing.
Fred, make sure you don't. Make sure you give it to a kid this time. Okay.
That wasn't opening day, but yes, if I get one, I will definitely give it to a kid.
Also, make sure you catch it.
Yeah, right. We had that problem too.
But no, I think one of the things is just weird, as we were talking about, right? We're going to do this virtual for a few weeks, and really for a few reasons. One, just trying to make sure, just keep everybody safe from COVID. A few of us have family. My family, is at my house. So I'll say that first and foremost. My family has had 3 scares in the past year with serious health concerns. So just being a little extra cautious. So we're going to kind of get through through this hopeful spike, and then kind of as it settles down, we'll look to get back as well. But the other thing we're going to do is we're hopefully in the coming weeks and months, we're going to be revamping the studio here. It's going to be a different look from what you guys are used to when we get back. So I'm excited, and I know that you guys have had some input and some thoughts, and excited to kind of see what it does for the show and the authentic feel of it.
Yeah, we're going to talk through that a little bit more. There might be a couple-week hiatus while we get things arranged and redone. And obviously this is a slow time of the year with the Ravens season being over and the Orioles not kicking off yet. So we'll see what happens. But at least for the next few weeks, we will be doing this remote. So appreciate your guys' support. And again, appreciate you guys bearing with us as we get through this. But, one of the things that we haven't had a chance to talk about because we were gone last week is college football, right? So they had the national championship. You had the rematch between Georgia and Alabama. And I think all of us kind of, even with Georgia's depth and the way that they looked this year.
We all said Bama.
We all picked Bama in that game. Well, Georgia held their own, man. They ended up getting the national championship. They ended up beating Nick Saban and the Heisman Award winner in Bryce Young. But speaking of Nick Saban, because, I think a lot of us give him shit, and I think it's mostly out of jealousy because just what he's able to do and the success that he's had for so long. When you really see him as a coach and him as a leader, as a role model, and you got to see that in his post-game press conference. They had Coach and they had Bryce Young, and what was the other guy's name up there? It was Washington,
Anderson.
I think. Anderson.
I thought it was Anderson.
Yeah,
who both
defensive end.
The defensive end, right? They both had rough games, but they sat up there and faced the media, and the media was dismissing them to then talk to Coach, and Coach put them back in their seats and gave him a nice little speech. He said these players are not defined by a single game. It was almost kind of like an Al Pacino type of speech that you see in the Any Given Sunday kind of in the movie. It goes to show you just what kind of a person that he is, the mentor that he is, and the coach that he is.
It's funny you say that. Think about Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday and tell me he doesn't look like Nick Saban a little bit. Tell me you couldn't see.
I mean,
you couldn't see Al Pacino playing Nick Saban if it's a younger Al Pacino
and
playing a Nick Saban in a biopic if this was 10 years ago.
Going,
You saying he should be Ed Orgeron? Is that where we're going with that?
He could probably knock that one out. He's a little too old now. But.
Goog says Bryson will easily gonna go 1 and 2 in next year's draft. So that just goes to show the kind of talent that damn
Speaking of
that university puts out.
But did you see what's his face, the quarterback for Georgia on the Today Show? Looked like he was stoned out.
He was hungover.
He was so hungover.
He was so hungover. I don't blame him though, man. You beat,
that's once in a lifetime.
Yeah, you beat the mecca of
How
programs.
Wait a day.
How about the extra thing? Oh God, why am I drawing a blank on this name? The wide receiver that tore his ACL for Bama, Williams.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank. It popped in my head. They're like, that just sucks.
Yep.
Like you hope it's. I know when knee injuries are a little bit different nowadays, but anything can happen. But hopefully, like he recovers because he was a top 10 pick.
And that's to that point. I know Ryan and I have kind of had this discussion before. This is the national championship. Nobody's sitting out of the national championship game, but we've talked about like players who have NFL aspirations opting out of bowl games because of the fear of getting hurt, especially when you have, regardless if it's a first round, designation or a fifth round designation. If you've got the aspirations to play at the NFL level and you're being talked about being a potential draft pick, I don't blame players for sitting out of the bowls. Now, again, national championship, that's a different story. But, for these kind of meaningless to the player type of bowl, I don't have a problem with these guys sitting out because of that fear and that happening.
Yeah, I mean, I get them not playing out, and I think it's hard to in this day and age, right? Because they're looking, and some of these guys can be in situations when you're looking at the draft, right? You can be in situations where you're looking at generational wealth for some of these guys.
Right.
And that's just through the draft, or not even necessarily generational wealth through the draft, but wealth that could set you up for your future. No, if you work it out right, you can set you up for your future, even if you don't make it in the NFL, right? And to put that at risk for one game for a team that you played, for 4 years for, which is great. 4 years dedicated, a lot of them, it's a brotherhood. I get that. But at the same time, that brotherhood, brother should respect brother and understand that brother's going to want to do what's right for him. And for some guys, if he really truly thinks, hey, I can't get hurt here, right? Maybe it's a bubble guy. Maybe it's a guy that isn't sure where he's quite falling. He knows he's on a cusp, but he could do it. He could have a really good game and drive it up, or he could take his stock and make it fall.
Yeah. All right. So we got a bunch of guys in the chat room, or David, bringing up a lot of Ravens questions. So some of the questions you're bringing up, we're definitely to talk about on a future show. But let's just give a quick synopsis on some of these questions he's got. He says, "Who is the MVP of the Ravens this year?" His is Andrews, and I think we're all in agreement with that, right? I mean, there's nobody else that stood out all year long. I mean, the records that Andrews put up this year, he broke the receiving yards record, he broke the receptions record, and a lot of that happened prior to the extra week. So all those fans that are out there, oh, they had an extra game. No, he broke a lot of that stuff prior to the extra game. I don't really think there's anybody else. I mean, you can debate the statless wonders like the Kevin Zeitler signing. I mean, you just didn't hear anything about him, and that's a good thing. Right. Bradley Bozeman and the job he did at center. It's you can make that argument, but Mark Andrews was just, for me, head and heels above everybody else.
Yeah, I think that he played very well, especially the latter half of the season where we were hoping it was going to be needed most. I have heard people floated out there, and I get the take. I just think it's not fully thought out. There's people that say we wouldn't have been in the position, and we were talking about this when Bobby was on, that Lamar is was the most valuable player on this team. And the reason their thought process is behind that is without Lamar, we're not 8-3, much less 8-9.
We lost 6 in a row without Lamar.
Right. So the value of him, most valuable player, well, when you didn't have him, he wasn't there. Overall picture, if you're looking at a full season, I think it has to be Andrews. I get the argument for Lamar, but I think it has to be Andrews. He had a few struggles a little bit earlier in the season, but then just kind of seemed to hit stride. Ironically, when it came to Huntley, him and Huntley just connected from the get-go.
Too much, almost.
So
right.
One of the debatable things for me, and I was going to save this for a future show, but you know what? I'm going to bring this up now. We
can dive deeper in a future show.
We will. I'm going to bring this up now because I think Drew will also have an interesting take on this. So, Rookie of the Year for the Ravens. You could easily say Odafe Oweh.
I know
because of the numbers that he put up, right? And Rashad Bateman, in the small sample size that he had, because remember, he didn't play for the first 5 weeks of the year, whatever it was, 5-6 weeks of the year, didn't play. In the small sample size, he put up almost 600 yards receiving. I think he only had like one touchdown, though. So, okay, you can make that argument. But for me, the guy that played the entire season, the guy that showed the most improvement from week 1 to week 18, right? 18? Yeah, week 18. Brandon Stevens.
Yeah.
I really think the job and the to be thrust in as a rookie because of all the injuries and to do the job that he did and again improve, because I'll be honest with you, the first 3 or 4 weeks I'm like, what the fuck were we doing with this draft pick? What a waste. But the Ravens obviously saw something in this kid, and this is a kid that bets on himself and believes in himself and obviously puts in the work because it showed on the field immensely. That last quarter of the year, he looked like a veteran player out there. He knew what he was doing, and they moved him all around in that secondary.
Yeah, I knew where you were going with that. Like, when you were going, once you downplayed Oweh, I was like, all right, I knew where he was going with Brandon Stevens. You're not going I think there's going to be a lot of people that sit there will think, oh, way, I get it. You think of the Kansas City game where, like, what he did broke that game open.
Right.
And it swung to a momentum in our favor to win that game. And he's had a lot of flashes, even though I think sometimes we're just like the personnel around him kind of needs to be there a little bit. I mean, that happens with all players. Like, I mean, if Aaron Donald has nobody else around him, all right, well, you just focus on him and that's it. But like you said with Stevens, it started off rocky, yeah, but it was also like all we kind of heard when he was drafted was that word we hear with like even with Owe, project.
Yeah.
There's a rawness there. It's a project to get to where we think he can be, and we have faith in him, as a front office. But then, like you said, to just be thrust into it, and then the fact that like you're not. I mean, we didn't look up any numbers, but like there's not many times where you go, Jesus Christ, where was Stevens on that one?
Right.
Whereas like even like a Chuck Clark, and I like Chuck Clark, you had that from Chuck Clark. Like where were you at on that one? Like that kind of thing. He just showed glimpses that he was at least maturing and improving from week to week. Where, like you said, the last like month or so of the season, like it wasn't a hindrance. Like I'll take a guy like I'll just beat up on it for a second, like Chris Westry.
Yeah.
Where it was like that was like the guy that was kind of like the dark horse, and not just by you. I mean, it kind of happened. Whereas like that was a dark horse. Like watch out for this guy. He's shown a lot in camp, and that was just like. On the field, it just wasn't there. I mean, granted, maybe some of it ain't his fault with the injury and then being hung out to dry in the Chicago game.
Yeah.
But, like, you didn't really have those moments for me from Stevens later on in the season. When you needed him, it was like you weren't hearing his name. And, like, you say that with offensive linemen sometimes. Like, that's a good thing. Like, he was doing all the right things and not being, like, leaving an island out there or not being where he needed to be. Like, it seemed like he was getting the hang of it. I was happy to see it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what Odafe Owe did in that first, we'll just call it 8 weeks of the season. That first 8 weeks of the season, you see the promise and the upside. Like Bobby said earlier, you don't even know really what his ceiling is because he just flashed everywhere, between the pass rush, what he was able to do in coverage, the speed, the sideline speed that we talk about. Like he has it all. But they talk about hitting the rookie wall. I don't know if that's really what happened or what, but there was a stark difference in the second half of the year versus the first half of the year. In Odafe Owe's play. And again, that's the only reason I give the edge to Stevens is because he did it over the full season.
Not a rookie, but a guy that I think deserves a good, decent bit of credit. And Googs brought it up for like maybe like you kind of would consider for maybe most improved player would be Anthony Averett.
Yeah.
Because like I think you think like this was what, like your fourth. That was your fourth corner, like when the initial depth chart came out. And then you're like, there goes Peters, and Jimmy was, in and out with injuries early on. And then Humphrey was gone. It was like he was the number one guy. And I think back to especially like that first Cincinnati game, you're seeing these big plays left and right. But like whenever they attacked Averett, especially early on, they were attacking Averett like left and right with Higgins. And he was holding his own. And like he did that a lot this year.
Right.
And it's just like it was unfortunate. Like he was like kind of like the glue for the cornerbacks, and then he got the broken ribs or bruised ribs or whatever kind of late to kind of like stun at the end of the season. But like I think he deserves a pat on the back. I think he kind of came out of nowhere where we weren't really expecting a lot of him, and for being a guy that shouldn't have been like a top corner for your team, he did a pretty good job.
Scott, James, anything?
I was just saying, I think that kind of it takes us into the idea of defensive player of the year, right? That's one that when you look at that starts to become a hard decision, right? Odafe Owe started really well, was doing extremely well. He, obviously defensive rookie of the year. You could make that argument for him, just as you guys were talking about. But at the same time, defensive player of the year, you could say him. You could turn around and you could make the argument for Patrick Queen with the elevation of his game that we saw a little bit, mid to late in the season. We started on him hard, right? But then he started becoming an impactful player once they made the change for him and said, we're going to put you in a different position. You put him in that position, now all of a sudden he starts to kind of flourish a little bit. You could make some arguments for a Tyus Bowser at times, the way he was playing.
Ding, ding, ding.
And that's kind of where I would go with it. The only other guy that I think kind of you can throw into the mix is, to your point, Anthony Averett. When I look at it, to me, it's Averett and Bowser, because Averett, with the way that he was playing, with everybody else going down, when you don't have anybody coming up and playing in that position, that's one of those things you have to kind of step up when you are thrust from 3, really 4, up into 1 in the course of just a few weeks, and you play the way that you did. Are you going to have some burns? Sure, but to handle it the way that he did, what?
Yeah, a couple games that got burned.
Yeah. But to be thrust when you're going against number 1s and you're used to going against number 4s, I mean, what do you expect? It's going to happen every once in a while. But to then adjust and play some of those guys, adjust and recognize when they're on those go routes and not biting on the
it's NFL,
fake there.
Next man up.
Listen, I give a lot of credit to the secondary, considering all the issues that they had and all the injuries that they had. I think they played well. The issue was the communication. It wasn't that they were getting beat left and right all the time. You had the terrible game, like you said, for Westry when he wasn't healthy yet. I mean, he looked so slow in that game, in the Bears game. I mean, they were blowing by him. Like you said, Anthony Averett had a couple of games here and there where he gave up some big plays. Obviously, the terrible game that they had against the Bengals with when what's his name? Jamar Chase. I mean, just went for almost 300 yards against us.
Yeah, when it was like Averett got hurt, and then when it was like besides Averett, it was just all Kevon Seymour's and a Jackson or a Johnson. I don't even know who that guy was. Like,
but you guys are missing a guy on offense, though.
Go ahead.
Duvernay.
Yeah. Duvernay, yeah. I mean, he's obviously the special teams player of the year. I mean, I would even give it to him over Justin Tucker, only because they kept Justin Tucker on the goddamn sidelines too often in this season. But
need him.
Even though he did break the NFL record this year with a 66-yarder, there's that for Tucker too. But Duvernay's an all-pro. Like, not just a Pro Bowler, he is an all-pro.
But I'm saying, like, they could have used him more in the offense. And when they did use him, he provided a good feel for wide receiver. But also, we all thought, like, maybe he wasn't going to make the team this year.
Yeah, when they were talking about potential I didn't have him on my list of wide receivers to go because of his special teams value, but yeah, I mean, I guess he was a name that was floated out there. But we'll dive more into this. Like I said, we've got weeks and weeks and weeks of shit to fill up.
We can break a whole show out for this. We need to, and we do need to do that, because we got to look. We're going to go back and look at what we had put down at the beginning of the season, and just to look to see how different it is, because I think it is going to be different. But we'll kind of see where it plays out.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next Tuesday night, 7:30, same virtual